evening, everybody, and welcome to round number 10 of the 11 rounds in the ASR Supercars Championship for season 2024. It's a second trip across the ditch to New Zealand. Don't ask me how the Kiwis have managed to snaffle that one, but they have, and it's off to a new track for the first time in ASR history. Just like the development series did a week ago, the main game field now tackles the tight and very interesting confines of the Taupo Motorsport Park circuit on the North Island of New Zealand. It's the last of the sprint round formats, therefore it is, of course, the Taupo triple header, and the championship is getting very close to its conclusion. My name is Steve DeBreeze. Benjamin Roach is opposite me for the second to last time this year. Roadie, it's a cracking round a week ago in Dev Series. Very, very close finishes in all three races. Do you think the same's on the cards tonight or not?
You do not have to be Australian or New Zealand to be watching this. I wish I hadn't mentioned it the last time. I'm starting to feel so already. It's been a long year. We are only in the start of November. We've only got one round left, and it is making for an interesting championship fight.
Certainly is. The championship is not done and dusted by any stretch of the imagination, but the front runner in the title fight does have a very healthy margin. But it is, of course, a track that nobody in this field has ever raced before in this league. Those that actually have the upper hand are the substitutes and the ones that are doing double duty between the development series and the supercars this year, because they of course raced last week. So if I count those drivers up, there's there's probably about 4 or 5 that raced a week ago that are doing the second round of or the second week of racing here in the series. So they have a little bit of inside knowledge about what to do and what not to do around this circuit. But the interesting part for me, Rody, is that it's a completely different car to what they had a week ago. So throw that out the window. Those cars were quick. The Gen 2 cars, we obviously don't have a representative lap time IRL around Taupo Motorsport Park for them, so they were quite quick. So I'll be interested to see what some of those drivers can pull off tonight in the Gen 3 supercar.
It will be, yeah. It's interesting just looking at the times that have been set, and granted we haven't got the results from this practice session that are rolled into the records, but as per usual, Dev Series sitting at the top of that. But yeah, the way things are sitting, I think you're looking at least something close to a second difference between the Gen 2 and the Gen 3 cars around here. It's all just down to that better grip that the Gen 2 machinery has. The only place that Gen 3 is going to be quicker around here is down the back straight, but you're really not much to be gained there outside of a higher VMAX.
Here we go, off to the North Island of New Zealand for the second time this year. And this time a little bit further north, off to Taupo, and then just on the outskirts of the city it is the Taupo Motorsport Park circuit with 14 turns, illustrated by, I guess, Rody, a couple of different variables here. Very tight and twisting first sector. Second sector with some banked corners and some blind approach turns, like for example turn 9, and then the last section of the course, a big high-speed run down to the final sequence of corners, which is a little bit of an awkward sort of sequence of corners. It brings you onto the front finish straight. So there's only a little bit of respite down that back straight, but the rest of the lap are very much in a concentration phase.
You are, yeah. I've heard some people have likened this track to New Zealand's Winton Raceway, which there is an element of that to it. Basically, the first sector, or the first almost 2 sectors of this track, up to about turn 9, it feels like someone's taken a go-kart track and scaled it up to the width required for a circuit racing car. We've so far run this in Dev Series. We did run a race on Wednesday night with a couple of guys in the mini challenge cars, which obviously very different to most of the machinery that we've been running this year. And we will also be racing this track in a couple of days' time with the Aussie racing cars. And it's provided a very different experience for all those classes of cars, but it's one of those things that we've found with the slower cars, much more suitable for a 2-wide racing experience, at least in a situation that you can expect to get a pass done in one corner. Whereas for Dev Series and for Gen 3 as well, it's going to be a similar racing experience to Barbagallo that we've seen in the past, where if you need to set up a move, you need to plan and you need to execute 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 corners in advance and set yourself up, get alongside, and stick it out until you get that pass done.
Yeah, I agree. That was a big talking point coming out of the development series round. Patience will be rewarded. You have to be patient. You have to plan your moves. You have to think about it. You have to be talking about setting up the move maybe 5 corners earlier than you normally would. Sometimes you can set a move up, say, 2 to 3 corners earlier at some of the other tracks, but it's very much a long game here. There's a bit of sit and wait behind cars and behind traffic throughout the first part of the lap, and then the second part of the lap you get a couple of opportunities down into turn number 11, which is a 180 degree bank corner, almost reminiscent of Kolb Corner at the Barbagallo circuit in Western Australia. So that's turn 6 for those that are a little bit on the uneducated side. And then down into the final complex of corners. That's where we saw all the passing happen for the race wins on the final laps of all 3 actually, of the development series races. So that's something to take into consideration tonight, where you can set your passes up and how much patience you have to have. It is a soft tyre round and it is the final sprint round of the year. So that's something to be mindful of too. The car setups that some drivers will probably go for might be slightly aggressive, and a few drivers might go slightly conservative, just to see if they've got some meat under the tyres of their chosen rubber before they get to the end of the race. There's a bit of a thought pattern that might be some people might actually end up popping some tyres, so I'm not quite sure how true that actually is, but we will see. There is still a lot to play out, not just championship-wise, but for the remaining 5 races of the year. Qualifying not too far from getting underway in the traditional format that has become the Supercars format for the last several seasons. Here they all come, queuing up down to the end of pit lane. Well, it's getting a little bit willing here. A few drivers going down the pit lane side by side there and getting down to the end of the lane. The 10-minute format, so it prompts for drivers to actually get out and get laps done. So we don't want to see drivers actually sitting in the pit lane and just waiting things out as the green light flies and we get things underway for a short, sharp 10-minute burst for top of the pops honours. No shootout tonight, all about speed and all about where you start this upcoming first race, because remember, with the sprint format, it is a middle race, is a top half inversion. So wherever you finish in the top half of the field in race 1 is where you start race 2, and it's progressive grid race 2 to race 3. So there's always a little bit of opportunity. If you have a little bit of a shit quali, you can get back out there and you can try and recover up the field, and you can see if you can get yourself maybe a pole position start or a front row start even for the second race. So it's all not lost for the whole entire night if your quali goes to pot.
The other thing as well with the inversion is it gives the opportunity, if quali goes to pot or if the start of the race goes to pot as well as another example. And we saw that with Ethan Knight in Dev Series where he was off the track in the first lap, but thanks to partially through the safety car, but also through hard driving, got back to, I think it was 13th or 12th by the end of race 1, got inverted towards the front and disappeared off into the lead. But same sort of thing, and if anyone's that are running mid-pack, if you can hold a pretty good defensive game, and this is a really good track to have a good defensive game on, you could take advantage of that inverse top half to set yourself up really nice in the points. Maybe won't be a win, but you could find yourself in the top 5 just by the ability to having the ability to park the bus where it's required and in the way it's required, and it's very easy to do that around a track as narrow as Taupo.
That's right. Well, first man across the line to start the clocks ticking is Brandon Dostal. He's actually substituting this week for Rory Collins, and very fittingly has gone with the Team Kiwi retro type of livery on this car. He of course won one of the 3 races at the Taupo circuit for the development series a week ago. He's of course the current champion in waiting at the moment in the Super 2 standings in the development series with a round to go. And he's got a little bit of a handful there coming through turn number 8 and got the slide on into turn number 9. And behind them, Cox, I can see, looks like Devonish and Kiddis are in there as well. So we'll start to get a few of some reasonably decent times in the next 30 to 45 seconds or so. Already 7 minutes remaining, so 3 minutes on the clock gone by the time your first driver comes around to chalk up a lap roadie. So there's no waiting at the station for any of this to take place here. It's get out, get on with it. There's only one car out there not on track at the moment, which is Lockie Lock in the 237. And he's in the pits. 26.6 to start things for Dostal. Whoops, a bit of a moment for Cam Rutledge there at the final corner. And I would say, Cam, at this point, you're probably better off just to actually probably park it and go back and get another set of boots, because there's not much there. And for Stenberg, he's had a fair moment as well down at turn number 1.
Importantly, he waited until after it didn't matter. He'd already set his 25.496 across the line, but yeah, seems to be, I don't know whether that was, it might be perhaps an intentional move. Drivers might be recognising with either where the tyre wear is at, or just with the shortness of the session, that the quickest they can get back to pit lane to get another run on their boots is probably the better option. And obviously to support that fact, or support that possibility, Kurt Stenberg is already in the pit lane heading back out on track again, so he's going to aim to go a little bit better. As speaking of going better, Wayne Walker has just gone just on nearly 4 tenths of the good, so that's put him into a 25.160. When he's back to the pit lane, he's back out again. So that seems to be the theme for these guys: is get out, get an out lap in, get a time lap in, reset, go again.
Yep, very quickly turn those things around. Also knows Kai Jones, who's in there, the suicide awareness machine, normally piloted by Luke's Spec, I think it is. He was actually off the road and turned the final complex corners. Actually, you actually don't want to go too far down this part here. You don't want to go too far down there, because if you turn around and try and come back, you end up with a disqualification, as what happened to Matt Cecil in the development series a week ago, because he actually got a bit lost, let's just put it that way, thinking that was the pit lane.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an easy throw, I suppose, for guys who haven't been to this track before. It's a very sort of it's almost like a South American style pit lane entrance. It's very similar to a lot of the stock tracks, and just the amount of shape, I suppose, to the pit lane entrance. But it's also just the nature of the track. The original track layout around Taupo, and you'll see as cars go from the transition from sector 2 to sector 3. The original track was essentially just the run to the back straight, the hairpin, the back straight, and then a couple of corners off. It was almost like a square oval kind of a thing. And so the pit lane is up on the right for drivers heading up to the hairpin on the back straight, and that was the old pit lane. But obviously it's a lot smaller than the current needs require, and is also a bit far out the way for the teams, obviously, with all the transporters parked at the other end of the track. So, but that's how they used to handle the pitting at this track. So that's why the new pit lane is a bit more of a mess. But to go back to the point we're actually talking about, the top 3 have stayed very, very much the same. Gaps have stayed the same. They're still out there trying to get the second lap run in. Leonard Grossel is surprisingly popping up to 4th, and it's been a little bit of a while since we've seen Leonard doing some pace. Actually, I think somebody's gone off the final corner.
Yeah, I was just watching Higginson coming through the middle sequence of corners, and Dostal right behind him. They were both a little bit sideways coming through there. So they're on to turn number 9. But they're on out laps at the moment, so there's nothing really stopping them. They're on their second run of form. Yeah, you mentioned the likes of Leonard Grossel up to 4th. Tim Redmond's currently 6th, though. Lead Kiwi at the moment in 6th position, and a little bit of an awkward year, I guess, for Tim. He's been looking for some much better results than things have actually sort of afforded him, but always would be a good scenario for him if he can put together some good points on home turf. And he's raced here before in the past, I'm led to believe, so he'd be very familiar with this circuit and the nuances of what it is. I guess the only difference that a lot of drivers need to be aware of is that they're using the old pit lane this evening. The new pit lane is prepared and ready to go, but unfortunately didn't quite make the track limits rewriting the file in time, so that'll be something that looks at for next year. But actually, in fact, I don't mind the longer pit lane. I actually think the longer pit lane is probably the better pit lane, at least in terms of feeding traffic back into the racing part of the racing circuit without major interference to other cars.
Yeah, I think the only concern I think some drivers have found, at least compared to what they're used to, is the pit lane exit. It's a bit tighter, a bit of a slower corner out of the pit lane itself as it feeds back onto the track than people are used to from a supercars pit lane. But it does feed you a little further round turn one, puts on the outside of the apex, and generally the few lines through one, as we'll see both in qualifying and throughout the race, but generally you're not out where the pit lane entrance is when the pit lane entrance comes in, although it does still cut onto the track quite a bit as it comes through. But it is a nicer pit lane, and I mean, it's a bit slower, but I mean, everyone that is pitting is going to be pitting the same, so it doesn't actually make too much of a difference in that fact either.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you came down the front straight there, you saw that the new pit lane is actually ready there. It's just barricaded off with some traffic cones at the moment. So there's preparations already afoot potentially for next year. As we're watching Daniel Cox coming down, that really awkward section, that blind turn at turn 4, Rody, has called plenty of drivers out. You're coming through the chicane at turn 2 and 3, and then you come up and over the rise, and the circuit just literally drops away from you, and then all of a sudden you've got to hit the brakes really quickly to pull it up for turn 5. So that is a real tricky sequence of corners to end the first sector of the lap. A few drivers have bowled it a little bit wider than they ideally would like to, and then find themselves having to tour the grass and losing some time. Let's keep an eye on Tim Redmond at the moment. He's actually on a fairly decent lap right now. He's just been shuffled down the order to 9th, and this is looking relatively handy to vault him back up inside the top 5 if he can put this last sequence of corners together. He'll also get another bite at the cherry here. This is a real difficult sequence of corners. Some drivers try and hang it to the right at the second part to try and open up the final sequence of corners. That's a very nice time for Redmond. That's in the top 2 rows. That's next door to Kurt Stenberg right now. So he'll get another crack, but he probably won't do much better than what he's just done there, because he's gone a little bit wide and just pinched the rears going into the final, to the first corner.
Yep, and he's conceded out of that one already.
Yep, he has indeed conceded. So 30 seconds left on the clock. Times will come thick and fast here now. Ryan Smith, he moves up one spot. He'll get another lap. There'll be a few more behind him that will probably get another lap as well. Noah Turra, I think he will probably be the last one to start a flying lap. Just ahead of him, Will Devonish. So they'll have enough time on the clock for a couple more, or for the last one there. Devonish through. Ewing, I think, actually is just behind Turra, and he will get, be lucky to get one here. 3, 2, 1. No, he's finished. Oh, straight into the fence there as well. So that's checkered flag now. Ewing only can muster 5th place. Rutledge down the escape road into the pit lane there. So we're now eyes on a few of the drivers here. Stenberg now up at the second sector split, not only on himself but also on the pole timer Wayne Walker as well. So this is the one to watch out for here. Walker's in pit lane, so he is the high man on the totem pole at the moment that everyone's aspiring to. And there's 2 drivers out there that are trading time. So Stenberg with a very strong first sector, personal best in the middle sector, overall tracking like he would be on the front row. If he can get it, little wiggle out of the final corner, stays 3rd. So lost it in the final sector there. The only man that can deny him is Noah Turra. Turra was up fractionally at the first sector split, taking a wider line for the final sequence of corners. 2 tenths down on the pole time. He's currently on the front row. He might actually be lucky to pick up a very small slipstream from Devonish, who's just ahead of him at the moment. And what's he doing on this lap? There's nothing spectacular going on for Devonish. He's no personal sector or best sectors on this lap, and gets to the line, improves fractionally, but not the place, and neither Turra. So he actually wasn't far off his own PB. So at the end of the day, Walker survives with another pole position to his name for the season. He's made quite a habit of this over the course of the 2024 campaign. That makes it his 6th pole position for the year, and he actually can't be beaten from this point either in terms of the pole position. So pole award for 2024 goes the way of Wayne Walker with 6, and possibly one more to go. Nearest best to him after that was actually Luke Rosella with 2. And then 1 to Stenberg and 1 to Noah Turra. That's how that all looks on the season so far, Rody.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was a really good effort from the guys in qualifying. Good to see Tim Redknapp sneaking up there, as we said earlier, into fourth. Newing as well at fifth, actually, which demoted Wedding to the
Yeah.
come on, the W and the D. Will Devonish all the way down to sixth place, which I think is, I don't think it's the lowest he's qualified all season, but it's the lowest he's been in a little while. He's normally been pretty well set in that top three or top four with Walker and Stenberg, and also occasionally Noah Turrer as well. A few other drivers actually that dropped a little lower as things played out. I actually have to go back and check the order on that one, and I think it was Leonard Gross will drop down to 8th. Actually, Foley sneak up into the top 10 as well. He's starting from 9th, and Ryan Smith out of 10th.
Yeah. So Devonish's worst qualifying all year actually is 11th at the Gold Coast. So and he actually had before that he also started 26th at Albert Park. So they were the two events where he had to start outside of the top 10. But yeah, the 20 that actually skews his average qualifying performance quite heavily when you look at those two oddballs that are there. The 11th not so much, but the 26th place start for Albert Park all the way back at round 2. Like that takes his qualifying average out to 8.11. Whereas Walker and Stenberg, like Walker 2.44, so averaging, pretty much top 3 every round. Stenberg averaging top 4 every round. Noah Turrer averaging top 4 every round. So that's where the consistency lies there. And speaking of consistency, that's what wins your championships, Rody. So we go over and we have a look after 9 rounds of the championship have actually been completed. And we finally can reveal that these points include the drop rounds in them. So the worst rounds for each driver have been deducted starting from round 10 or from the end of round 9, and they will continue to be deducted for the balance of the season until we have a winner in the championship. So deducting 147 points from Kurt Stenberg and 183 from Will Devonish, because that's their worst 2 rounds. It gives Stenberg a 266-point lead in the championship with a maximum of 600 points on the table to be earned over the next 5 races for the next 2 rounds. So that is a telling statistic, Rody, because if Stenberg leaves here tonight with a 300 or more point advantage, he will effectively be a 3-time ASR Supercars champion.
Absolutely, and that'll just come down to, I think, purely his night will be down to how well he's adapted to this track, given the lack of experience. But again, the lack of experience for everyone in the field. So really, this is going to be a show of adaptability to the track, but also raw pace. But yeah, if he comes at it tonight with a 300-point lead, he's sewn that up, and he'd actually be the only driver across the 3 series coming to the final round with an ability to lock the championship up with a round to go. Everything else is within the margin of 300 points. It's pretty much margins are actually similar to what we've got here coming to the final round of the other 2 seasons or other 2 series. Sorry, but Stenberg's the only one with the possibility to lock it up with a round to go. But that will take a decent performance tonight, and crucially, he's going to have to pull away from Devonish, which first of qualifying won't be too hard to do. Devonish is actually locked in a good little battle over second with his indirect teammate in Noah Turrer. And really good season from Noah, actually, to put himself up to 30. He's actually ahead of Walker, which is, considering Walker's pace, at least in qualifying, is a little bit of a surprise. But Turrer's been able to, as we talked earlier about the consistency, his consistency has just been that little bit better than Walker's this year.
Yeah, and Noah Turrer actually missed a round as well, so he actually dropped 0 points for the year. So
True.
That's his true point score there of 1,887. So you're right, only 10 points in arrears of Will Devonish. Don't count Wayne Walker out as well, so he's looking for a top 3 finish and strong qualifier. Just got to put it together for a couple of races, and he'll be right back in that fight with the 2 in front of him. Then Redmond, who's had a bit of an up and down season, but he's pretty much all on his own there in 5th place. Brenton Foley snuck up into the order, and there's some good little battles forming there on the lower fringes of the top 10 there. A couple of drivers not here tonight in green and spec, so they will probably drop down the standings a little bit after tonight. So we go over the page to the 11 through 20, and there's a lot to play for here as well. So the returning Lockie Lock is going to start to challenge Cam Rutledge, I think, there, and those two are probably going to try and vault themselves into the top 10 after tonight. Brendan Ross, unfortunately, missing in action tonight, very late withdrawal, so a few drivers behind. So Alex Kiddis, who's here tonight, Ryan Smith, who's here, and Luke Newing, they're going to look to try and capitalise with some good points and move up the order there as well. The likes of Rory Collins, Steve Burko, not here tonight, and of course we know about Lewis Wedding having missed most of the second half of the season following his very abrupt retirement, exiting the Sydney Motorsport Park round in the middle of the year. We go over the page and we have a look at the team's point standings, not sewn up by any stretch of the imagination. Top 3 definitely not settled. Top 4, I guess, if the Sideways Esport Light guys can get their act together, they could probably start to mount a little bit of a challenge. But suffice it to say, it's looking very good there for CRE Engineering, and of course both drivers count in terms of championship points towards the point score. So that one we fully expect to not have a result until we get to the final round in Adelaide in a couple of weeks' time. So lock it in to your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. There is only one round remaining after tonight for both the Development Series and the Supercars Championship. For the Supercars Championship, it is on November the 29th. And for the Development Series, it is 1 week earlier on the 22nd of November. And for the one and only time this year, Rhodey, for some weird reason or another, it's the first time that both series actually have slightly different races compared to each other. It's a 125k single race event for the Development Series, and it's a pair of races for the Supercars Championship, which, if memory serves me correctly, I think they're 100-kilometre races each. So yes, it is actually, just looking it up now. So 2 100-kilometre races for Supercars and a single 125 for Dev. So it's a little bit of a different take, considering they've sort of followed the same sort of number of races and structure for most of the year. Just the distances have been a little bit different.
It is, yeah, similar vibes at Adelaide to Bathurst. Well, Bathurst was a 125 as well. So that's where that's kind of meant to be picking up and following along. And it does provide a different characteristic, whereas the race for the title is a single 300-point race, whereas for Supercars, sort of half but not quite sort of going off of the IRL Adelaide 500, which was divided over 2 races as well. That's going to be a 200k race. That's 2 100s. So actually, the race distance is going to be longer for the Dev Series guys, but they get it all done in one run. But yeah, the advantage for the guys in Supercars is there's a 250-point races. So, you know, if race 1 goes a bit poorly, you get a still chance to make it back in race 2. Whereas for the Dev Series guys, they would put all their eggs in the one basket.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well, we are about to put a whole bunch of eggs in a whole bunch of baskets now, because it is time to go racing for the first race of the evening at Taupo Motorsport Park. So cars getting ready to jump onto the grid and get away for the first tonight. So 100 points for the winner of each race tonight, and plenty still to play out in the championship. Race 21 of the championship, 21, 22 and 23 tonight, and then 24 and 25 at Adelaide in a couple of weeks' time. So I think we've just about got everybody. Steve Warwick, Nathan Higginson and Lockie Lock are the only 2 we're waiting on. And I'm wondering what's happening here. There he is, Lockie Lock at the back. So all 21 cars in the field are ready. It's a smaller than usual field tonight, Rhodey, so you've got plenty of time to get through the grid. And here we go.
I do, yeah. It's a fairly slow outlap, all things considered, with the length of the track and the way the first couple of sections play out. So, starting from pole is Wayne Walker for Wentworth Motorsports, having now sewn up the most poles available for this year. Second is Noah Turra, the first of the CRE cars, amateur racing by CRE, and one of 2 of those cars on the grid tonight. Third is Kurt Stenberg for Nicole Autosports, debuting the Stenny's Bin Nights Racing livery this round. Kind of like the colour scheme kind of reminds me a bit of the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile car. But yeah, something different to see on the grid. Fourth is Timmy Redmond for Beyond Racing, one of 2 drivers for that team here tonight, with Luke Newing in 5th, running the Wet and Wild livery for SES Satellite Racing. 6th is Will Devonish. He's got a bit of work to do from this far back on the grid, but he's got the pace to get that done. with Brandon Dostal in 7th, filling in for Rory Coleman of SES Light. 8th is Alex Kiddis for Wayneswood Motorsports. He's running pretty well in the top 10, and he has the advantage of having run last week in the Dev Series. With Leonard Grossel in 9th, he's running the livery that he ran in the Enduro Cup with Stuart Beautiful, and we'll talk about that stuff a little later on. 10th is Brenton Foley for PBF Engineering. I think he's the only one of the 2 cars here tonight, with Ryan Smith in 11th for SES Team Dark. 12th is Kai Jones in a very similar looking car, inverted for SES Satellite Racing, so I promise we won't have any issues throwing those apart at all, with Yoda Sigmanis in 13th in the Mobile 1 back Sierra Engineering number 51. 14th is Daniel Cox for Sierra Anson Motorsport. He'll be one of 2 cars on the grid tonight, with Darryl Callahan in one of the alt cars from Liquid Q Racing, which at my end is a plain white car. I assume something's gone wrong there. 16th is Steve Warwick, also running an Enduro Cup livery. This is the car he shared, or actually he didn't share, a car that Kurt Stenberg shared at Bathurst with Mitchell Steele Allison. 17th is Nathan Higginson in the monster-backed Higginson Media Motorsport entry. Pete Throw in 18th, the second of Beyond Racing Mustangs. Darren Lognan in 9th for the Vortex Racing team. Cam Rutledge in 20th, the second of Sierra Anson Camaros. And Lockie Lock starting from the back after a penalty in the second of the Amped Up Racing by CRE Mustangs.
That's your grid. Just waiting for the last of the cars to be locked and loaded, and we'll be underway. It is the Taupo triple header. First race of the evening. Turra and Walker now get to go to battle, and a great launch from Walker. Great launch from Redmond from the second row of the grid. He'll be second by turn 1 as they funnel into this 180-degree banked corner. He was second all but briefly. Stenberg now gets back on the inside and wrestles the ascendancy away for P2. Redmond keeps his nose in there, but he has to concede. It's a long game. It's 16 laps. There's already a yellow flag in the first sector, so there's a little bit of chaos, I would say, has happened at the back of the field. And there is a car that's a bit slow, and it's Newing in the Wet and Wild entry for SES Satellite Racing.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what's happened there, whether he's been fed into off the line, but otherwise a pretty clean start for the drivers, and they're just starting to get through now into the start of the second sector. Alex
Kiddis has moved up a couple of spots as well, and we're just getting a little bit of a replay to have a bit of a look at what happened to Newing at the start there. It looks like he might potentially have been nudged as everything goes down to the final corner, or the parabolica, I guess we can call it. You can call it Cobb Corner, you can call it whatever you want. It's turn 11 in the books there at Taupo Motorsport Park as we are nearing the conclusion of the first lap of the race. Redmond has had to concede here. Stenberg's actually gone to the lead here. He's managed to wrestle past Walker and take the advantage for the first lap here. So started third, moves up to first. Walker down to second, and Redmond's moved up a spot as well. Here's that replay incoming from the paint doctor of what happened to Luke Newing at the start of this race. So down the hill into turn number 1. A little bit of contact from Kiddis there, but it sort of shoved him through the corner a bit there. So that was all okay. And then Turra got it. Oh, it was Turra that got into the back of him, and then sort of, I think, Kiddis not sort of in a bit of a weird spot, I think. Really couldn't do very much with that as Newing was spinning. Kiddis just finished him off.
Absolutely. Well, that's put him down to the back. Needs a bit of work to do, but as we said with Ethan Knight in Dev Series last week, the opportunity is there for Newing if he's able to get himself back up through the field to what will be 11th spot on this group with 21 cars in the field.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it's rounded up too, so it's an odd number of cars tonight. So a half of 20, half of 21 is of course 10.5. So you are right, Brody. That 11th spot in the order is the whole point for the reverse grid race that comes up after this one. This is of course a sprint round, but the important thing to remember is it's 3 laps longer in terms of the race distance compared to what the development series did a week ago. So we have a look at our Pallet Control Solutions race facts here. 3.3k circuit. The fuel is not a factor in this. The soft tyre is though, because it can be a bit difficult to make the soft tyre last if you've gone a little bit too aggressive on your setup. And if you're doing things like Will Devonish was doing, wagging the tail of the dog coming out of turn number 1, you are going to wear those rear tyres out. It is a circuit that does punish the right-hand side of the car.
Absolutely, yeah, and tyre wear, tyre wear is going to be tyre wear was concerned out of Dev Series as well, and even there I think we were a little worried about popping tyres and having to drive conservatively. These cars do use a little bit less of their tyre in terms of aero load, but generally the tyre load is actually worse for these cars because of the lack of aero to support those tyres. The only thing I think that gives them half a chance is they're going to have slower speeds through the corners because of, again, the lack of aero. But yeah, longer race for these guys. The way they like to race and the way that some of these guys like to the car setup, they use a bit of their tyres. So definitely a bit of a, I think, conservation race in the early part of this race. But I think you'll find some of the guys towards the back that maybe don't use their tyres up as much as the guys at the front might actually find an advantage towards the back end where they can continue pushing at the speeds that they've been doing the whole race, whereas the guys at the front having to really baby what's left of their tyres.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that maybe that might be why Stenberg's sort of gone to, or wanted to go to the lead of the race. He prefers to maybe control the pace out in front and preserve not only his tyres, but maybe try and make the other drivers behind sort of use theirs up and burn them up, trying to pass him. So it can be a good strategy, possibly can be a bit of a bad strategy as well if you don't play your cards exactly right and you make a mistake trying to defend somewhere where you shouldn't defend and end up locking up and running off the road. So you have got to be careful trying to play a strategy card like that. But that's why I believe he was so keen to get back to the lead of the race, is maybe just to try and build a little bit of a buffer and then try and control the pace at the front and have enough meat on those Dunlop Super Soft tyres to bring the car home.
Absolutely, and just supporting that, just the fact that he's sitting in the distance he's sitting right now from Walker. He's got ahead, he's sitting about 7 8 10s, but he's not trying to pull away either. So yeah, very much trying to manage that, manage that pace, manage that race, manage that tyre wear, obviously manage the race from the lead, but managing the tyre wear as he gets into the back end of the race. But there are some guys in the field who are going a little bit more aggressive as things, and Kiddis is one of them. Here, just trying to put a move on Noah Turra coming out of the hairpin.
He actually just lost that position to Noah Turra because it was across the line before. So now he's trying to wrestle that position back, and now Devonish is trying to get stuck in there as well. Now it's a difficult job to get that pass done at the final corner. We did see it take a fair bit of effort from a few drivers to make that happen in the development series. Some of them were actually going the long way round at the final sequence of corners and sort of sweeping down across the nose of the car that they were passing late in the race, because it's very easy for the car in front to defend the traditional passing manoeuvre down the left-hand side of the circuit into that final sequence of corners. So you have to brake a little bit earlier for the corner because you're not on the traditional line. You can't carry the same sort of speed. We did see some cars carrying speed right around the corner, sweeping down, but then you end up in a side-by-side situation going through the last couple of corners, and it does tend to be a little bit of a contact every now and again, and it does make the overall passing manoeuvre quite difficult to achieve if you've not got someone that's willing to cooperate with you. Cooperation is a little bit sort of key here as well. Leonard Gross going up to 8th place, but I'm not sure if now he's becoming a bit of a truly train with this form of half-dozen cars behind him.
Turra's gone deep at the hairpin.
Yeah, Turra's actually gone for a Lance Stroll style excursion here into the kitty litter at turn number 11. He's going to surf this out the other side. He's going to come on behind. Is that was that Ryan Smith or was that Kai Jones in the 60?
That was Kai Jones.
That was Kai Jones. He's actually going to come out behind Callaghan as well. So not good for Noah Turra in terms of the championship picture. Cox is actually going to get him as well. Lucky not to make up some ground there as well. But yeah, he was got it all wrong in the braking zone and went deep of his own accord at turn number 11. Very easy to do, I must say, Brody, even when testing the circuit. I was having some issues coming up and over that rise going into the braking zone for turn 11. It's a very sort of fine line you tread in that braking zone heading up the hill. We'll go and have a look just to sort of see where that is now. We'll look at it probably from the onboard picture of Tim Redmond from the roof cam. As we're coming up to that part of the circuit now, it'll actually give you an idea of the bumps and the elevation change and things that go on at this circuit. Now, Redmond's dropped back from the leading two here, and just the apex there at it's going around here because you're going around the corner, then up and over some rise, and then you have to hit the anchors fairly quickly to get into the bowl here. And what Redmond's doing there is he's carrying the corner speed through the corner out to the wider part of the circuit and then sweeping back down, trying to square off the corner and get onto the power quite early. That was a big talking point for a lot of drivers who developed the series, because some of them looking for the double apex and some of them were running the line that Redmond just did, and some of them were trying to hug it tightly as if it was like a single radius corner, like turn number 1, and you have to keep to the inside. But because the corner's banked, you have to use that to your advantage and to try and make lap time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a good little corner with that banking, but it is probably one of the tricky braking zones that you see around. I say Australia, this is an Australian track, but around supercars racing, because there's a nice bump coming in. You're coming up over the crest in general. Then right as you get onto the brakes, the inside of the track dips down to start that camber into the corner. Depending on your line through the corner as well, you're possibly having to trail brake through the corner because you're having to turn as well. That corner has at least 2 or 3 different lines that work. The one that Timmy's going for is one that I have seen in some actual racing material that Timmy posted in his team's Discord earlier in the week. Unfortunately, it wasn't early enough that I could use it in Dev Series, but from what I remember of the brief that I saw and the brief page that was mentioned was the page that covered this corner of the track. The line that Timmy is using again this lap was pretty much the line that it dictated was the best one to go for.
Yeah.
So it will be very car dependent, and I think for the Dev Series cars, you got away with something a bit more of a flowing line because of the better grip. But for these cars that have been very much point squirt this year, going for a line where you V out the corner as much as possible and just turn it into a braking zone and an acceleration zone is the best way to go about it for these cars.
I would agree. You just saw an illustration there from Will Devonish of what he had to do to keep Alex Guinness behind him. So he side through at turn number 9 and then sort of took that early apex at turn 11 and then kept it fairly tight. He didn't run out to the middle of the road to allow Alex to get back underneath him, and then was very tight on the apex there. And that's actually allowed him to move away because it checked Alex up mid-corner and then had to put him in the gun sight of Brendan Foley, who's lurking behind him at the moment. Now, importantly for Will Devonish, at least he's going to get a handful of points here, moving up into 4th place as it sits right now, but he is going to lose some margin to Kurt Stenberg. That points gap will shoot up, so he does need a little bit of a change of fortune here in the next 8.5 laps if he wants to make some inroads there. He will, of course, be starting in front of Kurt Stenberg by a couple of positions if they were to remain where they are for the second race of the night. And then we go into a scenario of the progressive grid results from race 2, forming the grid for race number 3. So it's not all doom and gloom just yet for Will Devonish, but we are paying very close attention to the points gap between the 2 of them, because it has ballooned out with the drop rounds being calculated in. Coincidentally, I think the round that Stenberg dropped, I believe, was the Gold Coast round when it came to all things supercars. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head what the round was that Will Devonish dropped, because he hasn't missed a round. Neither has Kurt Stenberg, I should say. They both haven't missed a round. So Stenberg has been confirmed. Yes, he actually dropped the Gold Coast round with 147 points. And Will Devonish, actually it was the last round out for Will Devonish, round 9 at Long Beach. That was his worst round of the season. It just so happened to be another 40 points extra compared to what his title rival has dropped. So that's the nature of a Supercars Championship, unfortunately, already, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of those tricky positions where you almost get punished in a way by turning up to every round, but if you manage to sneak at a drop appearance somewhere in there, then you're pretty good. But also, if you just have a shocking round, then you're all right. It's only an issue then when you get 2. And I think I'm a good example for that, having had a pretty all right season in Super 3, but having well, it wasn't a DNF, it was like a last place finish and 3 laps down and race 1 at Barbagallo, because that was when my shifter died. And actually I think in the end my shifter did actually die enough that I killed the engine. And then race 2 was a night race, so we know how that goes for my computer.
No,
and
right.
Then double DNF at Long Beach because the tyre barriers were made out of kryptonite. So that's put me in a position where my drop round is 0, but actually I'm still 700 odd points away from the guy I'm meant to be fighting for the championship.
A little bit of an awkward moment there between Higginson and Steve Warwick at the final corner, and Warwick's going down the pit lane, so I don't know if that's, I don't think that's intentional to go down the pit lane there. But he was off the road actually. I think he made a mistake up at turn number 11 and he took the kitty litter. He was in 10th place, so that was a shame in its own right. But he's then had a bit of side-to-side contact with Higginson.
He's pitting.
He's in the lane there, and I'm wondering if he's coming into pit. So that's interesting because he did make some contact with Higginson at the final sequence of corners. Then I saw it go down the lane, and I wasn't quite so sure what was going on there. So that's bit curious because that has elevated Igmanis into 11th place. Now he was briefly 11th until he was passed by Kai Jones, who then took over 11th, but Warwick now pitting, and yes, he's returning to the track. Igmanis now finds himself on the front row alongside Kai Jones for the start of the next race, should they finish where they are, as Callaghan looks to plunge down the inside of Higginson at the bowl, and he got hung up on the curb there as well.
He did, yes. So I was just checking his reason at full account. Steve does stand to leave laps. I'm not sure whether that was a pit stop for fresher tyres, whether there's some damage somewhere in the picture, or whether, as Walshy just put in the chat, whether Steve's expecting a safety car at some point, in which case he'd be the only one on the field with fresh tyres, but he's going to actually skip himself on the lead lap, and that's a situation to play out. But
the field's too strung out for a safety car already. That's the problem.
Pretty much, the field's too strung out, and of the battles that we've seen, there's just been like little, not even spot fires. There's been little embers here and there. Nothing's been really bad enough to see a safety car, and even in Dev Series, the way that people sort of have thought the Dev Series race this year, it was a pretty big accident as things go to have caused the safety car that we got in the first race of Dev Series, but it was only one for the night. So you're going to have to do something pretty special, I think, around here. There's definitely some corners to do it if you manage to do as Steve Warwick did, actually coming into the pit lane and bottle it coming off of the back straight or even onto the back straight. That's an easy spot to do it. But a lot of places, even for the narrowness of the track, you've got to kind of get 2 or 3 cars involved. And there's certain ways to go about to get a safety car. It's pretty resilient around here.
That's right. There's been a car number change as well as a livery change for this car this round. Ryan Smith, so up 2 spots. He's 9th, and he'll start 3rd for the next race. It goes according to plan for him. I don't know the significance of running 911, Rody. He deliberately wanted to run 911 for the Taupo round. Given that he's not a Kiwi, I'm curious, do you know what the reason behind that?
I imagine, given it's triple header, I can probably drag him in at the end of the night to ask him about it. Although I'm feeling we might not get a straight answer, I've asked him about it a few times because from the circular humour in which he floats in, there was concern from me. I don't think I was the only one. There was definitely concern from me, though, this livery would take a different turn given the choice of number.
Yes, me too.
So I had to very attentively have a look at the livery when it was submitted to make sure. But it was painted by Hato, and Hato is very much above board with the way that he does his work, so it wasn't too much of a concern in the end. But from what I understand, there is a personal reason for the choice of the 911, and we are racing on. Well, actually, we're not racing on. We're racing the day before the 9th of November. So I believe that is the reason he's running this number this round.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there must be a personal significance of that reason why he's running that number. Right, gap in front has closed, and closed rapidly in the last 2 laps. It was about 9 tenths to a second about 2 laps ago. It is now academic at this point. So is this Walker now applying the blowtorch because he's conserved his tyres a little bit, or is this Stenberg just continuing to manage the pace out in front? Walker full 2 tenths of a second quicker that last time around. He was about another 2 tenths of a second quicker on the previous lap to that as well. So this is now getting a little bit tight out in front for Will Devenish's sake. He kind of hopes that Wayne Walker can pop up there and snaffle the top spot and prevent Kurt running away with some points. But for Redmond as well, he'd be hoping that these two start to engage in a little bit of a battle. So he's 4.5 seconds back and he did a 28.1 last time around. Devonish at 27.9. So Devonish is matching the pace of Kurt Stenberg at the moment, but he's some 7 seconds behind the leader.
Exactly, and you mentioned before that there's ways around this track to get a pass done if the person you're racing with is willing for a pass. You don't even have to be actively, aggressively defending around half this track to make it hard for the person you're racing with to pass you. But in case of point in Dev Series last week, it took me partially through intelligent planning, because if you're in the lead of a two-car train, you're very vulnerable. If you're sitting in the back, then you kind of have a bit more control. But it took me until the last sequence of the last lap to get a pass done on the one car I was racing, because we were racing pretty respectively. Same thing we're going to see at the front of this field. If Walker is intending to pass Stenberg, I imagine, given the challenge to pass around here, he's going to wait probably as long as possible, and probably definitely wait to do it at a corner that he's absolutely confident he can get the pass done, and then do what is needed to prevent a repass the next corner.
That's right. So my mind immediately goes back to development series last week. It was the last sequence of corners on the last lap. That's when all three of the race wins were won and lost. So Ryan Smith, Brandon Dostal and Ethan Knight, they were the three winners from that evening's trio of races, and they all took their opportunities at that final sequence of corners, mostly from the braking into turn 12. So either going the long way round, or trying to go down the inside, or getting the cut back on the final sequence of corners. So that's where I suspect we're going to see a change for the lead, if it's going to happen. So there's a few spills, a few more spot fires, as you rightly called it, Rody, running around at the moment. So Dostal and Ryan Smith is probably the next closest one of the field so far. And then behind them, actually Kai Jones is starting to get rather interested in the back of Curtis Igmanis here. Now, if you're Jones, it'd probably be better to sit where you are in the running order, because you'll get to the second race and you'll be starting on the left-hand side of the circuit, which means you will be in the whole shot position to defend into the left-hand corner. Oh, you got a bit wild there. You'll be in a whole shot position to defend into the left-hand corner that comes up for turn number 1, which you ideally want. You're not on the racing line for turn number 1, but you're on the defensive line with only a short run to turn number 1.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of those really nice tracks to be on the inside for turn 1, even though you do lose a bit of the grip from being off the racing line. But yeah, it does make it a lot easier on that inside line. But I think from what we saw coming out of the hairpin, and I think what we're starting to see now, I think we're starting to see that Jones is perhaps getting to the end of his tyre life a little earlier than Turmo is, or at least the way the car's behaving seems to indicate that. And so I think from where he's sitting, he's probably going to be happy to maybe settle down and stick with that 11th place, and importantly keep himself covered off of Darryl Callahan in 12th, who's just lurking back there. He's still only 2 seconds back, but if he's looked after his tyres, he could be a threat as this race closes down.
Yep, well, he's cleared away from Higginson, who, as usual, is starting to get a little bit sideways now. I'm actually surprised that Newing and Tara haven't been able to clear Higginson in the last couple of laps, so he's actually doing a remarkable job to keep them behind him. But I fully expect that they will have a little bit of a stab at him this time around, as it's starting to get interesting out in front with a lap to go. Walker's got over and under on Stenberg at the final sequence of corners, so he's now got the high ground into turn number 1. So gone a lap earlier than we anticipated it might happen, but he's looking for an approach to get out there and now hang on for dear life. These two are going to exchange a bit of paint here at turn number 2. Walker prevails. Stenberg just withdraws, all but briefly, but he can bet your bottom dollar he's still going to throw the sink at him, and he does down here at turn number 5. Crisscross now on for Walker. Stenberg a little bit sideways. Walker with some great traction out of 5. So already the gloves are off here, Rody, with half a lap remaining.
Absolutely, it was very well done by Walker. I think kind of give Stenberg the opportunity to throw it to the inside, but it meant that he understeered, had to get up to the exit curb, sprayed the car wide, and gave up all the advantage he gained in that corner. So he's going to really have 1 or 2 last opportunities here. Depending on the line he wants to take through the hairpin, it is a multi-line corner. You can park it up the inside if you're feeling brave enough, and if you can get the car stopped. The other option is down the middle of the race, and I think he went for a move and he's had over the lap.
He's nerfed him. So that's a major issue there. Stenberg is getting rather loose on the accelerator pedal out of the final the final time out of turn number 11. That's that will be interesting. Was Walker defending? Was Stenberg going for the move? There's been some history between those two. Think back to the Gold Coast a couple of rounds before. So Stenberg will cross the line here. That's a bit of a question mark over what has just transpired there. But we've got to call it as we see it. So Stenberg with the win. That'll give Redmond second. It'll give Devonish third. Walker, I think, is going to have done just enough to stay in front of his teammate for fourth. With Kiddes there in fifth. They'll put Brandon Dostal will get sixth place for him. Grossel seventh. Ryan Smith actually got to the back of Grossel after all of that for eighth. So up 3 spots for him. Egmanis ninth. So there's been some changes here. Something's gone wrong for a couple of runners inside the top 10. Egmanis is ninth. Callaghan is 10th. And Noah Turra's up to 11th. What happened to Kai Jones?
Kai Jones, I think, Kai Jones front.
Oh,
right,
yeah, he's lost a tyre. He's
Higginson,
a puncture.
Higginson's lost a tyre as well. He was backwards coming into the braking zone, so I think he's lost a tyre.
And Cox massively shortcut the final chicane here. So this is the soft tyre coming into play here. Few drivers struggling to the flag here so front right puncture for Jones. You had Cox with a similar problem. You had Higginson was round at a couple of sequence of corners as well.
Yeah, I think for Higginson is the right rear.
Yeah, so there was all sorts of things going on there, but yeah, a lot of change in that last couple of sequences. I'll be rather interested to see the finishing manoeuvres of that. So Kai's tyre actually went quite early by the looks of things. In all of this, he was looking good. He was looking very good for the front row start, and I actually think he's had to limp the car around for most of the lap. Just going back to to what's happened here, and it's probably looks like it's actually the Paint Doctor replay here, and I think it's actually let go on him at the worst possible time, coming down the hill into turn 5. So he was already limping it. Oh, he's already limping it at this point, because he's given away so much margin. So it actually went at the chicane and went at the most inconvenient of times, and he had to tour the grass. So that's where it all went wrong. But this is what we talked about, Rody. You go a little bit too aggressive on a couple of setups and it can bite.
Absolutely. One we missed at the end there as well, actually. That was another victim of the tyres. Not really necessarily a surprise given what we know about his driving style. Foley as well. He had a tyre go, I think, coming either out of the hairpin or into the hairpin, but he was having to gingerly run up down the straight, trying to maintain some sort of position. In the end, similarly to Higginson, the car just rotated, and I'm not sure if it was contact with the wall or something else happened, but last we saw of that car, the electronics were off, the engine was off, and I'm not sure whether it popped something or what happened, but in the end, he's retired on the last lap.
Yeah, he hasn't seen the checkered flag, so that's over and done with for him. There were drivers that were actually limping it back to pit lane with busted tyres as well. But this is what the round was designed to do with the soft tyre round. It was designed to get the drivers thinking, and it was designed to get the drivers to have a bit of a look and a feel and go, well, do I go aggressive? Do I take a gamble? What do I actually do? So a few drivers just went a little bit too aggressive, trying to make a little bit of lap speed, and it didn't come off for them. So they pay the price after what was looking like it was going to be a rather entertaining battle out in front between Walker and Stenberg. It went down to turn 11, and we will, I guess, leave that one for the stewards to review. We'll call that one as we see it, but you can think of it a couple of different ways. You know, was someone defending into turn number 11 and just got a little bit crossed up, or was someone not quite defending into turn 1 and so into turn 11 and sort of left the door open for a half move that ultimately then closed the door? I can't tell from this angle. It was a bit of a difficult one to judge from my perspective, Rody. I don't know about you, but definitely could go either way, that one.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a hard one to judge as things right. See, I very much think that perhaps from Stenberg's point of view, he thought Walker was going a little further wide before he went to turn in, and the gap would have been there. I think from I don't think that Walker was necessarily driving in a defensive manner. I think it was just two different drivers expecting different from the driver they were racing than what actually played out, essentially. I think the intention from Sandberg was to dive it up the inside, expecting a gap to be there, and the gap actually wasn't there, as it turns out. And he hadn't quite moved across far enough to make the gap exist. And so I think that's ultimately what's caused that. I don't think it's going to be any sort of intent from the driving. It's just going to be a simple lack of a redress in that one. So as things sit, Stenberg is going to be the last of the inverted grid, which obviously translates as winner of race one. But I don't necessarily expect to see that hold up as we get into next week.
Yeah, well, we will just leave that one and we'll see how it actually all pans out at the end of the day. So with the top half inversion, you are absolutely right. That does mean it puts Kurt Stenberg as the 11th car on the grid for that one. It does mean that Noah Turra will start off of the pole for the next race coming up. So that's an interesting little bit of a swing there, especially considering that as you said, Kai Jones was looking the goods for that particular spot, along with Egmanis, and they now find themselves sitting a little bit further down the field than they would otherwise like. Well, that was the first race of the Taupo triple header, and there is a little bit of a brief hold here, I guess, at the moment while the drivers go into, I guess, a chance to reset ready. I think there's definitely a few drivers are going to have to reset after that one, because there was definitely a few pop tyres at the end of it. This driver, I would not be surprised if he was one of them, to be perfectly honest with you, because when we were watching Higginson around at the final corner and Jones limping his way to the flag, Cox actually cut the chicane at the final corner. Actually went, I think, off at the turn 12 and then just sort of surfed across the grass at 13 and rejoined at 14. So he might have actually been a victim of tyre fatigue as well.
That is, it is entirely possible. It was any better of hiding it than those around him, but either just trying to avoid the other cars that were there, or trying to perhaps, two birds one stone, trying to take the smoother corner line for a very potentially very unstable car. And that's the big concern with this track, and I suppose the last sector is, generally speaking, the supercars, and if there's any car on AMS, it's very much reliant on having four round inflated tyres, and all of a sudden when you lose one of those tyres, the cars can get very pitch happy and very unstable. Generally, it's better to lose the front tyre if you have a choice. It just means the car doesn't turn, but at least it is pretty consistent in that matter. Losing a rear tyre is where things don't become fun at all, because you cannot accelerate. You can't get anywhere from a standstill. You have trouble accelerating, and if you so much as put any yaw into the car, it gets translated straight to the rear, and the rear says, I have no grip, and around you go. And because you got no rear tyre, it isn't a half spin, it isn't a full spin. As I saw with Foley at the end of that, before he DNF'd, it's normally 2 or 3 spins. And you're very much along for the ride there, and good luck if somebody's around you. So it's a tricky spot to be in. I think the drivers that have had the tyre go, Foley especially, given that it put him out of the race, are going to go back to the drawing board, have a look at how they're going to do this race, and probably drive a little bit more within themselves in the first half, but try and make a bit more out of that tyre life. Because ultimately, finishing 2 or 3 spots behind where you would be on outright pace is better than running where you would be on outright pace, popping a tyre and finishing 10 spots down.
Yeah, that's right. I look at, I guess the recent example of Bathurst that we had with the Enduro Cup, which of course wasn't broadcast for the first time this year. But being able to make pace, conserve the tyre, go into a fuel run strategy type of a mode, and so on and so forth. It's always the sad things that the engineers ask you to make, isn't it? Those sorts of concessions. But all you want to do is go fast, but you can't always just go faster and faster and faster. The tyre is not infinite. It has a finite life. Fuel obviously gets lower, but fuel gets lower at the same time that the tyre wear is increasing, and there's not a lot of meat left on the carcass of the tyre. So you do have to find that balance point. Sometimes you do have to dial it back, and instead of going at 10 tenths, at the throughout the race, you have to go at 9/10. You don't have a choice, or even 8/10 sometimes, because you do need to exercise that little bit of restraint. And I think a few drivers just found out, yep, we you know what, we pushed a little bit too hard, or we went a little bit too aggressive, and we burned through our tyres faster than what we otherwise normally would.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's always the challenge, and it throws up the variety of the format in that it's only been, I think, a few races this year that have had to really focus on tyre conservation. I suppose, especially for these guys, a lot of these guys coming out of Enduro Cup are running around on hard tyres, used to having a tyre that would last longer than they ever wanted it to, used to having a tyre that would drive probably nearly as nice as they wanted it to, just in terms of the grip level. But definitely at no point I think I was anywhere near concerned about tyre life for the last 2 rounds of Gen 3 racing. And so it's a little bit of a rude shock, a little bit of a dumped into ice cold water to get back into a car that all of a sudden is now tyre limited, not only to get to the end of the race, but even to get not to get to the end of the race on some sort of tyre life, but get to the end of the race on tyres at all.
Well, not too much longer to go here before we get underway for race number 2 of the evening. And it's another 16 laps in store for the drivers here tonight. So, well, this one is the final time we will see, of course, the inverted top half of the race 1 finishing results. I guess it's been I don't know, Rody, what's your thoughts on this? I think it's been a bit of a popular format for some and a bit unpopular for others, but I guess it was conceived more for the development series drivers to have a chance to run at the front, but there was the obvious benefits that the Supercars ones brought on along with it as well, because it did mean that the faster drivers, more often than not, it showcases their skills in terms of driving through the field and showing how you can actually potentially pass a lot of cars and get yourself back to the front of the field.
Absolutely, yeah. It's given a good challenge out there for some of the guys that usually do not see themselves that high up the grid, and also extra challenge, I think, for the guys, especially the guys at the front. Some of the guys at the front are that used to, I think Devonish is the easy example to look at, for the guys that are just used to disappearing at the front and clearing away. Obviously not so much in Supercars, but another series you throw Will in, he'll get to the front, he'll disappear off into the distance to the point where people start suggesting success ballast. But these guys don't really get a chance to race and earn their positions quite this way. So it's a good challenge for the likes of Stenberg, of Tara, of Walker, and of Devonish to actually have a race for the position rather than just sort of have it given to them by how they qualified.
Yeah, that's right. And I know there's already a few calls for next year about, some tracks they did work well with the sprint racing, but this track I guess probably does too. But of course it is a bit of a tyre chew-up, but it does introduce a little bit of, some drivers like it because you do have an opportunity to be, to see drivers go off into the distance, but then they go too hard too early, they get a tyre pop or something like that, and then the opportunities for other drivers to come along. Some drivers would just prefer to be an out-and-out sprint, but there's a little bit of water still to go under the bridge between now and 2025. No decisions have been made on what's going to happen next year just yet. Decisions have been made on who's starting in what positions for this second race of the evening. It's Noah Tara, by virtue of finishing 11th in the midpoint of the first race. He takes on pole position ahead of substitute Daryl Callaghan in the Luke Q Racing entry here. Then you've got Curtis Igmana starting 3rd. Alongside him, Ryan Smith in the 911 Suicide Awareness Machine in 4th. Leonard Grossel in 5th place, ahead of Brandon Dostal, who starting in 6th rather. Alex Kiddis and Wayne Walker, the two Wayne's World Motorsport Mustangs, will be on the same row of the grid, 7th and 8th. Directly behind them, Will Devonish and Tim Redmond. And by virtue of his win in the first race, Kurt Stenberg starting in position number 11. Luke Newing out to 12th place, but that's actually not a bad recovery drive from him after all the shenanigans that went on beginning of the race, but he is buried in the mid-pack and we'll have to be a bit careful there. Lockie Lock starts 13th ahead of Cam Rutledge, with Kai Jones, one of the drivers that did pop the tyre in the closing stages of the race. Daniel Cox, I believe, is probably the same. Nathan Higginson, along with him was probably another one too. And Higo's going to start next door, Darren Lognan, Peter Thrower, Steve Warwick, and the retiring Brent Foley were the last of the runners. So Warwick had actually toured the lane, and Foley didn't shake the checkered flag after doing 20 of the 21 laps, 15 of the 16 laps that were on offer. 21 cars
20
out
cars on the grid,
yep. Is probably the reason for that one there, as everybody gets into their positions, and we're waiting for the second race of the night to get underway. Race 22 of the championship is officially underway, and I tell you what, that's a very, very poor reaction time from Noah Turra, and a great reaction time from Igmanis, who seizes the opportunity and goes through to the lead at turn number 1. Callaghan's going to fight him for this though. Okay, he had just as equally a good a start, but he knows where his place is. He lets the CRE Engineering Mustang go.
Yeah, I must be convinced that Callahan had an advanced preview of the start light procedure. There was Kiddis trying to round up the inside of Turra. There's a yellow flag out as well. Somebody else is around in the background. I'd take it.
Yeah, there's
a couple of cars in the back there.
Yeah, there's some shenanigans going on there. You've got Cox and is that Jones, I think, are down the order. So they were towards the tail of the field anyway, so maybe they've just been caught up in someone else's mess as everybody else is working their way through. Luke Newing, I tell you what, he's had a good start. He's picked up 3 spots, so he's avoided the carnage from the beginning of race 1 this time around. Stenberger's had a healthy start as well. He's actually cleared up past, well, Devonish sizes down the inside there at turn 11 and gets that spot back and almost goes up into a gap that doesn't exist, but Stenberg with a rocket start there as well. And now Redmond over his rear corner as well. So there's I was about to say, I think Stenny might have almost found himself boxed in very carefully there if it wasn't for them. Oh, they're exchanging some paint going into the final couple of corners at the end of lap 1. So this is now properly getting a little bit aggressive between the top 2 in the championship, running 10th and 11th as they see at the moment. Now plunging down the inside Stenberg, and it goes a little bit deep. Will Devers gives him a bit of an extra shove for good measure as he goes through the corner. But this is not overdone. But this is now ugly warfare on lap 2, Rhodey.
Yeah, lap 2 of a 16-lap race over 10th, but because the fight over 10th is ultimately the fight for Devonish over whether he gets to compete for a championship at the final round or not. He's running Stenberg right to the edge of the track and maybe even a little beyond that, taking advantage of the curve to technically leave Stenberg a car's width and about that much. But yeah, very willing stuff for lap 2. And in a race where tyre conservation is a concern, I feel like this might come back to bite them at the end.
Oh, it could bite them both of them very, very badly if they continue this little fight. They need to settle down, they need to put their heads down, and they need to focus on moving forward, because that's the order of the day to begin with. But it got very aggressive and very willing, and Devonish has locked up a tyre there, and that ruined Stenberg's run through turn number 11 because he couldn't run a high line through the outside. He had to check up, and Warwick's had a spin at the back there as well. So not a good couple of races for Warwick, but it's formed a couple of different battle packs here as well. So with a couple of groups at the beginning, and a little bit more tagging between the nose of the 47 and the rear of the 15 as they complete lap 2. Then there's this other group of cars back here, Brody, with Lockie Lock having started 13th. He's fending off Brent Foley, who's moved up 7 spots to 14th and is trying to march past the 237 Jack Daniels machine here at the beginning of lap number 3. So there's fights and battles breaking out all over the place here. This is what the reverse grid race tends to do, or the half reverse grid race tends to do.
Yeah, well, he's got his own little train going on here. You're right, Foley, the head of that train, he got past Higginson the last couple of laps. Behind Higginson, then Cam Rutledge, actually running his own little train now as things go, actually slightly bigger train with Lognan and Thrower and Kai Jones and Daniel Cox. Those last two both recovering from the early shenanigans. And I've just noticed as well, there's still paint swapping going on between the 47 and the 15.
Oh yeah, it's continuing to go on. Now Devon's just made a mistake leaving turn number 9. He dropped the tyres off, so he's going to struggle to defend this here. And is he going to get nerfed again? No, not quite. So this is going to be a heavyweight slugfest, I think, for a couple more laps yet. I know it's hard not to focus on it, but we haven't seen this sort of paint exchange between these two for a while. Oh, no, it's Hurry. His game just completely glitched. He was out towards the top end of the field. He just appeared in the middle of nowhere. I haven't seen that for quite some time. That's definitely some sort of game seizure or something going on. He's out. He's done. So he has retired.
Yeah,
I'd say that's an internet drop of anything.
The fact he's pulled over suggests something has gone wrong. I don't know, maybe, PC problem, maybe also a hardware failure to retired from that. But probably gave himself a bit of a spook as well if he's disappeared from the cars he was racing and popped them right in the middle of what was and still is a pretty feisty battle.
No, that's right. So up to the battle ahead of what we were looking at here. So Igmanis is cleared out here. So all this fighting and arguing that's going on has allowed him to clear out. Callaghan holding his own here in second place in the Loop Q entry. He's doing quite a remarkable job to keep these much quicker cars. We know Kiddis has definitely got some pace. We know that Ryan Smith's got some pace. So they could probably use that down the back straight to get past the machine on your screen here. And they need to do it fairly soon, I would say. There's a bit more going on there. Was that Smith with a late lock up into the back of Alex Kiddis?
Yeah, a little bit of leaning going on there as well. And this is the thing, that all these guys in this train, with the exception of Leonard Grossuller, who progressed from the series last year, have been racing in the Dev series, do all understand how they race each other and how they race around each other. Kiddis, obviously not a full-time entry as such. He's had a guest appearance for, well, actually what's going to be half the season. And honestly, perhaps could be seeing himself to next year if the numbers allow for it. He's had the access to it to do double duties to get a little bit of race pace in, and it's helped him out quite a bit. But what he has also learnt is how to go about defending. And we've got a situation right now where Callaghan is defending from Kiddis, who is then in turn also defending from Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith probably isn't too concerned about what Grossel's doing behind him, but he does know Grossel's quicker. He knows that Dostal probably a similar pace, but perhaps a little bit quicker. Ultimately, what this is a really chunky, it's a very complex as well train of cars that is going to be there for the likes of the first one in that train behind Walker, and then Devonish and then Stenberg to try and catch the process, and how they're going to go about doing that, because getting past one car is easy. Getting past what amounts to 4 or 5 cars, although Callaghan is starting to pull away again, is going to be a lot tricky, because some of them are going to be a little bit more permissive to you going for a move. Some of them are going to be parking the bus on you. I think the only one who's going to make things easy for Walker is his teammate in Kiddis. But that said, Kiddis doesn't want to give spots up to the likes of Ryan Smith and Leonard Grossel in the process.
No, he doesn't. And we just got a good onboard shot there of the reason for the 911 on the car number for Ryan Smith this round. Oh, Dostal with a lock up. Oh, he nearly got in the back of into the back of Leonard Grossel. Oh, he did right there though. He had a huge moment, compression locking under brakes for turn 12, and somehow didn't avoid the first contact with the 666, but he did get him at the second to last corner. So this is now starting to be a bit of a train here. I think Igmanis made a mistake on the previous lap, and this whole entire group of cars has gained a couple of tenths over the current race leader, who did a 28.3 last time round. There was some good PBs in the middle though. Newing and Devonish and Stenberg and Redmond all setting 27s and personal bests for themselves the last time round. They are buried in the quagmire that is the heavyweight slugfest from second all the way down to what is 11th with Redmond. This is starting to become probably one of the biggest supercar trains I think we've had for quite some time. So Callaghan in second, all the way down to Tim Redmond is covered by about 4 seconds, Rudy. 4 seconds.
Yeah, and this is what this reverse grid format or the partial inversion brings to the table. Actually, yellow. Pete Thrower. Pete Thrower actually on the other side of the track. He comes up way wide off of. Yeah, it was turn 9 or turn 10.
I think he's had a moment coming down towards turn 10 and got a tank slapper on and hit the fence there. But yeah, very briefly sort of appeared through the fence. But he has got going again, I believe. And he's actually, yeah, he has. He's just come back on in front of Steve Warwick. So Steve with a spin in the early going. Pete with a mistake. Oh, one of the SES cars is down the escape road. That's Jones. He's gone down. Yeah, he went down the escape road there. Oh, and he's having a terrible time in the number 13 in this race. So that's we didn't see anybody down that escape road at the end of the back straight in the first race. We did see it happen in qualifying though. So that's a mistake. But it's easily done, Rody. We did see it happen in the Development Series round last week as well.
Yeah, so as of this point, we're talking about that train, and we have now actually got that train fully in set. It was actually a little bit of a gap between some of the drivers, but at this point, Redmond has caught up to the back of Stenberg, and so it is a very spaced out train compared to what we used to in something like Dev Series. But to be fair, there aren't any of the usual progenitors of a train in this train. It's the likes of yourself, the likes of Daryl Callahan that are usually setting up the trains in racing. But Callahan's doing a pretty good job of setting up this train, and actually he's getting assistance from Kiddis in what would amount to the coal car of the train. He's not quite the caboose. The caboose is Tim Redmond currently, but the coal car of this train, it is a steam train, is Kiddis, and he's helping along with this train and just keeping Ryan Smith busy and actually allowing Callahan just a little bit of breathing room now and again, but then the train tends to back up again as they get to a corner.
No, that's right. And these two are starting to exchange a little bit of paint again, so it's not as bad as what it was, although Redmond wants to exchange a little bit of paint as well. I kind of think he feels left out with all of it that's been going on here. All right, now it's back to what it was 6 laps ago, and Stenberg going through. Look, I don't regress Will for not wanting to defend there. He needs all the points he can get, so he was going to make Stenberg earn it. I think any way you look at it, rather than the nose-to-tail contact, I think the pair of them would have preferred the side-to-side contact. But hard battle. I don't know if I can go so far as to calling it a fair battle, because there was definitely a little bit of taking liberties with leaving some space here, there and everywhere, but they definitely went to war there. It's now starting to get interesting out in front, because Smith has found a way through on Dostal. What on earth was he doing? He came from absolutely nowhere and has completely molested the 666 machine of Grossel, and he's redressing. So he was like a torpedo there, just absolutely came from nowhere. Big braking mistake going into turn 11, and that splits the train up.
Yep, and there goes that train.
And there goes that train. So what had actually happened in all of that was a mistake from Kiddis, and Smith had found a way through, and they were very close to three-way. Have a look at this, Dostal, just trying to squeeze. Oh, he got the grass, that's what it was. He tried to squeeze it down the inside of Kiddis. The move wasn't there, and Alex sidestepped the argument a little bit, and unfortunately the part of the equation that ended was Grossel being knocked off the circuit.
Yeah, and aside of the obvious losers from that incident being the two cars now down the back of the train in the likes of Dostal and Grossel, what it has also done is split the train up. It's meant that Kiddis now dropped back to fourth. Ryan Smith's gotten through, which was, I think, part of what caused that initially was people trying to get past Kiddis, so Smith has finally gotten through. What that has now done is it's broken up a lot of the congestion that the fast cars are having to deal with. So Stenberg is now through on Newing, and he's actually threatening on the back of Walker, trying to get past Kiddis.
Be careful here. Well, Kiddis sidestepped and let Walker go through. That was a bit dangerous too, because I was thinking that Alex might try and hold on to the position there and make life a bit inconvenient for Stenberg, but he's trying to do that now, but he can't get the whole shot down here into turn number 12. So Walker goes through, picks up some more points. Devonish is now being left to fight with Newing and with Redmond. So that's there's now points going begging here, and not in the favour of Will Devonish. So you can see in the background there, he's got his hands full with a couple of other Mustangs now. This is all going Stenberg's way right now.
Yeah, the other one I was going to say that in terms of how it's played out is the other person who's unfortunately who adversely benefited, who suffered as a result of this, is, you wouldn't think it, but Koenigsegg Manus had a very nice 7 or 8 car train buffer.
He's making mistakes
to anything else. He's now lost that buffer. His tyres are starting to go. That said, I'd be surprised if his tyres just to be better than the likes of the 47 and the 15. But importantly, his tyres are looking worse off than the 2 cars immediately behind him. He's starting to struggle. he was probably a bit of an outside chance to hold him to the win to the end of this race, but he's definitely going to be at risk now.
He is very much at risk. He's been making mistakes left, right and centre. His lap times have been in a high 128s. These guys here have been in a much better picture, sort of in the low to mid 28s at this phase of the race. So, but they've got to get a wriggle on too, because here comes Walker and Stenberg, so they are eyeing off some more championship points, depending on what happens over the course of the next 6 laps. And remember that there was that incident in the first race between the two of them, and I'm sure Walker is definitely going to want to get a win over Stenberg if he can help it. So they are 3rd and 4th, so 4th and 5th I should say, in the queue. So they're running nose to tail, top 3 running nose to tail. Then you've got the next battle that's just behind them, with Devonish leading Kiddis. Newing is in there, and behind them is, I think, is Redmond, and then Grossel, who's recovering after being sort of knocked off the circuit. So that's where the whole balance of the top 10 is. Dostal has redressed that position. He is behind Grossel, and he is 11th, ahead of Walker and Higginson. And the only retirement so far is Noah Turner.
Yeah, so Smith's just put a move up on Callahan at 4 seconds. He's gotten through on that one as well. Callahan wasn't really putting up too much of a fight for that one, so perhaps Callahan recognising at this point of the race at least that he's he can much fight the fight, but where to pick that fight is just a little bit of a tap from Walker, who's actually gone deep and gifted the spot to Stenberg. But in all that as well, with all this battling, and I was trying to lead into it earlier, with Devonish now through on Kiddis, who didn't make it easy for him either. He's now through. He's still best part of a second back from Walker, but if these guys keep battling, it gives Devonish a bit of a chance to make up the ground he lost trying to get past Kiddis. These 3 are still going to be an iffy tires. I think Walker, of that of the top 3 on pace, I think Walker is still going the best on tires. He had the least work into his car in this race so far, at least compared to the likes of Stenberg and Devonish, what we've seen so far. So I think realistically, if tyres are an issue, Walker's going to be the one with the advantage to work from. But they're still going to be knife edge on tyre life based on how many guys didn't make it to the end of race 1.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree with you. There'll be drivers that have learned the lessons from race number 1, and there'll be those that said, you know what, I actually wasn't too bad. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and should be okay for race number 2. But it is a little bit different track condition that's out there at the moment. It is a little bit different in terms of temperature and the angle of the sun and all those things as well. So there's a lot of things to be considered. We have the train again though. Igmanis has been caught. It's a bookended CRE 6-car train at the moment, with the teammates in 1st and 6th. Oh, big lock up Igmanis. He's going to go wide. That's the opportunity that Smith needs, and you make the mistake under pressure, and he was going to drop down. He's going to be the back end of the top 10. He's actually going to be 10th after all of that. So new race leader, Ryan Smith, in the SES dark entry, the 911 car, and he's got 4 laps to run here. I tell you what, wouldn't this be a story if he can make a race win here in the main game? He's had several already this year in the development series, and he did chalk up a win here last week in the middle race in the series. So there is some history here, and already what's happening here? Devonish has gone through. How did Devonish get through on both Walker and Stenberg?
They were 3 wide coming down the front straight. I caught that in the background of watching Smith. I was going to say that Smith winning this race is not down to Smith. It's been down to Callahan, but also down to how the 3 behind choose to race each other as into the door again. Stenberg on Devonish. So there's still a bit of bad blood going from the start of this race, still going between those 2.
Oh, well, here's the replay of what happened. So there was a little bit of shoving there, I think, from Devonish, and then he also got a shove from Walker to just make the problem even worse for Stenberg. So that's why there was all the oohing and ahhing and all sorts of things going on there between the 2 of them. Tell you what, Rhodey, Ryan Smith's got a little bit in reserve here. I think he's been keeping his powder dry, and he's looking not too bad at the moment.
Oh, well, yeah, well, it's now down to him.
Oh, Stenberg! There's the moment. There's the moment for Stenberg. He tried to get down the inside of Devonish there at turn 11. Unfortunately, couldn't make it stick. and I think a little bit of the side-to-side contact and the wheel hop, and he is down to 11th. So big swing in the championship picture there in terms of the point standings the way they are. Let's grab a quick replay. Let's have a look, because the door was open there. Devonish had gone through on Callaghan, and who just left the door ajar there, so that was all fair pass. He got a little bit too deep. Stenberg went in there. I don't want to call that. I don't want to call that, because that's very close to racing room, but it's absolutely borderline.
Yeah, it's a similar call, I think, to the one in race 1. I think it's the one we pushed through to the stewards for next week, because that's a really tricky call, that one. There was something approaching a car's width there. I'm just not sure on which side of the line of the car's width it was, but yeah, look, it was a, I wouldn't say it was an eventuality to play out something like that, but the way they were racing all race, they were asking for something to happen, and any car, supercars, GT cars, open wheels especially, wheel-to-wheel contact not advised, and no. even with closed body car like this, still grab the car and pitch it around. So not only has it knocked Stenberg back a bunch of spots, he's now back a bunch of spots with worse tyre wear, but also we lost a bit of tyre wear in the result of the spin.
No, that's right. I was thinking for a moment that the best thing that Igmanis could have done there was to try and hold Stenberg up, and he actually nearly turned him around at the same corner a lap later. There's all sorts. Oh, there's a few drivers. There's been some contact, I think, at the final sequence of corners, because there's a few drivers. There's Alex Kiddis is crawling. I think he's trying to redress this position against Newing. So there's been, the safety cars come out as well. So that absolutely kills the race. This sends the race into overtime, and there's drivers pitting. I don't blame them. I do not blame them at all for pitting. The ones down the back of the field are going to gamble here, and they're going to take some tyres. So the likes of Lockie Locke's in the lane, Brenton Foley, Daniel Cox, they're going to have a good they're going to have some really good tyres here at the back end. Yes, they're going to be down the order, but they are in a very strong position here to capitalise if any of these drivers in the field are a bit marginal on tyre wear. This is going to be crucial, and on top of that, they can get fuel, because all these drivers out in front, they might have calculated the fuel strategy based on being a green flag race with a little bit extra in the tank just to be safe. How much extra have they got?
Yeah, the interesting question here is going to be, like where your reserves are, and if you've got any to begin with. Fuel, that's one thing. You don't tend to put too much more in, especially with a tyre conserving race. The least weight you can run in the car, the better. So some of these guys, it's not their first rodeo. They're going to have a little bit in the reserve, but some of them have perhaps rolled the dice and thought, we'll be right here. I imagine the Dev Series guys will probably have a bit of reserve, perhaps planning on the potential for a safety car, given that we had one in Dev Series, but I don't know. But the other thing as well is just where those tyres are going to be at. Like you're not going to use zero tyre or zero fuel on the safety car, but yeah, you're 50-50. You're going to end up with a car that's going to be very light, no weight over the rear at all, which is going to help in some ways, but a car with a very light, car with a very little tyre. I'm not sure whether this actually helps in the guys in front or not. I think Ryan Smith, it was going to be 50-50 on surviving to the end of the race as it was, but I think he's sweating even more now. That's
the incident that triggered it. So late lunge from Kiddis down the inside at turn 12, and this is where the problem is here. So they're all waiting for the rejoins, and they've tried to come back onto the circuit, and yeah, that's a bit of trouble there. And I mean, Foley, he was in the absolute prime position there to capitalise and go into the lane. So that's the reason why we have the safety car. And I dare say that's not that one will definitely be frowned upon. I think that one's pretty clear cut, Brody. The car definitely behind, not far up enough alongside, and definitely did not, or had the room to do the move, but was not far alongside early enough to make that move stick. So that's the reason why we have the safety car. Yes, the redress has been done, but the damage has been done, and we are into overtime here. Now, we don't know how many laps we have left. That's the thing. We had 14 on the clock, we were completing, I think, lap 15 when the safety car came out. So you're guaranteed 2 laps. So that means we're guaranteed to get 16 and 17 under safety car at the bare minimum, which means at the best, we're going to get, at the lowest, we're going to get 18 laps. At the most, we could get 20. So I'll tell you what, these guys better have some fuel on board, and they are going to be gingerly making these tyres last as long as they can to the end. I wouldn't want to be a race car driver in the top 10 of this field right now. I would not want to be behind the wheel of one of these Gen 3 supercars right now, knowing that a safety car's come out and there's nothing I can do about it. I've just got to find a way to get around and get this done. So everybody down to 14th is basically a sitting duck at this point. Everybody else behind them, aside from Noah Tara, who's a non-finisher in this race, has got brand new Dunlop soft tyres and enough fuel to make this distance work, depending on what the outcome of the safety car is and how long it goes on for. Yes, you don't use a lot of fuel behind the safety car. You'd be lucky to use maybe 40% of your fuel. But the problem is it's adding to the lap count. So if you were trying to go for a little bit of a lighter car, maybe to help a bit with the weight over the rear axle in terms of preserving some of your tyres, and you were maybe cutting it a little bit fine and you didn't save a lot of fuel, you could be in a little bit of trouble here. Some drivers will then put the margin for error into play, and they will put a little bit of extra fuel in just on the odd chance that something like this happens, because really you have to consider it. You have to consider that something like this will happen, and it does happen from time to time.
Yeah, you would allow for the possibility, and I have a feeling that most of the guys in the sort of top 4 or top 5 didn't concretely put it into their plans, because this is a very quiet safety car lap. They're not quite all on idle, but I did notice a couple of them down the straight the last time by, down the back straight, where basically on the pit lane, on the starter motor, more or less, coming down the straight. So they're not so fuel critical that they're guaranteeing themselves to pit, but they are making it on the smell of an oily rag, and they're making it on well, to pick a rubber one, and I'm going to get yelled at for this, but they're making it on the amount of rubber that's available in the standard condom. So
very close to
they're gonna, it's gonna be an interesting one for the end of this race.
Man on screen, this is a benefit for him, because with his incident with Will Devonish just before the safety car came out, about a lap or so earlier, Stenberg actually puts him right on the tail of Leonard Grossel and Tim Redmond, so he can pick up a few more points here, and just at the moment it stands to be swinging the back to being almost a status quo after the first 2 races as to where it was at the beginning of the night between himself and Will Devonish. So the more he can sort of keep that margin from getting back to where it was, the better it is for Stenny going into the final race of the night. But that being said, there are definitely a few people that appreciated the reprieve and to see if they can make this work, and then the ones that are... I'll be interested to see what happens after the flag drops for the restart here, because the pickup point's going to be around the halfway mark coming down the back straight. So that's where we get our first signal that we're going to be going back to green flag running. You can see that Smith is everyone's sort of started to bunch up a little bit now, so I'm wondering if we are potentially going back to a safety car restart procedure. Callaghan on the screen is he's had the time of his life, I think, Rhodey, in this race, but he's got a little bit more work to do yet if he wants to earn himself a 4th place. Do you know what? 3rd place could be potentially on the cards for him if one of the top 3 runners has got a little bit of fuel trouble or a little bit of tyre trouble. You never know.
I think there's the 2 things that are coming. One for the field is the fact that all the tyres are cooled down now, so they might get a little bit more life out of them. But also for Ryan Smith, he's the only guy in the field to have managed a safety car restart. He knows exactly when he wants to go. He did this in Dev Series. He did this to perfection in Dev Series. So if anyone's going to have a chance of pulling away from Devonish on this restart in this condition, it's going to be Ryan Smith.
I know. And then you've got the likes at the back, Foley and Locke. They're chomping at the bit right now They want positions. They want these guys to fight. They've got the tyres to be able to fight this. The field is not completely compressed up. This is not what is normally the procedure here. And I'll tell you what, Rody, this is going to be one hell of a last lap. I don't know what to do, but here we go.
Well, he's accelerated off the final corner. He's got a bunch of wheel spin in the process, but Smith is away, and he's got a little bit of a gap. He's got a 4 or 5 tenth gap to Devonish, but it doesn't do much for him. He's already basically parked at the first corner. So, yeah, I think tyre wear is going to be a concern for all these guys. Actually, a bit of a congestion, though. I think Grossel and Stenberg had a bit of an interaction there as well. Devonish and Walker trying to do something, but with where the tyre life is at, I don't think that's a smart idea.
I don't think that's a smart idea either. Walker's now out in the weeds, and he manages to get back on just in front of Callaghan. So very lucky to avoid there.
What happened around?
Oh, and someone around at the back there in the who was that, 4th or 5th in the queue?
That was Redmond.
That was Redmond. So not sure if he was turned or not, but he has been turned around. And I'll tell you what, Egmanis has somehow managed to find his way back in front of Stenberg here, so this is good for Will Devonish in terms of points. So that was all because of the incident earlier on. Stenberg struggling. He's lost out to Brandon Dostal, who's gone through to 7th place, but everybody very gingerly making these tyres work. Smith is under siege here. Walker's got it sideways going into turn 11. Devonish tries to stick his nose in there. That's not going to work. You've got to wait for the last sequence of corners, boys. This is going to get rather interesting in the last couple of throws of the dice as we get down to the bottom of the 19th lap. 3 laps beyond the scheduled duration, and a big lock-up for the race leader. Is he going to shortcut the chicane? He's lost it. He lost a tyre. He has. He's going to lose the win. Devonish is going to sweep to victory here at the last throws at the end of race number 2. Smith with a big lock-up into the final corner. I told you it was going to be one hell of a lap, and Walker has done something there, and there's all sorts of contact at the end of the race there. I don't know what all that's about.
Devonish does, Devonish.
No.
There's a penalty at the end.
There's
Devonish
a penalty
is dropped
at the
right
end.
down.
Oh dear. What happened there? He's been done. It's a track violation for Will Devonish. You're absolutely right, Rody. Will Devonish has lost the race win because of the track violation. It is officially going to be Ryan Smith who is given the win. I tell you what, the one that I called after this, I said Daryl Callaghan's in 4th place, 3rd might be on the cards. He ended up 2nd after all of that. What an effort from him. And Walker 3rd, with Grossel 4th. Stenberg ended up, he finished 9th, but of course with Devonish with a track violation, that is of course a pit lane penalty if that is indeed proven to be the case. And we go back and have a look. We actually haven't got the timing chains. That might have to be reviewed. He might have got 2 track violations in the final lap. He's definitely got 3 laps that have been deleted for track limits. So one of them he must have been on his final warning at some point, and then in the final throws of that race there, he somehow has snagged a track violation. What a dramatic finish to this race.
Yeah, so what that's also meant is Grossel surviving through to 4th, Egmanis 5th, which considering, I mean, he had the pole, he had the lead for half the race, but you know, with the mistakes we're seeing with bowling himself off early, you didn't look to be able to hold on to that, but still, top 5, that's I think his best result for the year.
Oh yes.
Which is something. Dostal in 6th, which for somebody who is very much a possibility of being in these cars full time next year, that's a good step in the right direction.
Oh yes.
And then Foley up to 7th, which given that he started at the back, good recovery, and for how Foley likes to go through his tyres, he's held it well. That also he pitted, so he managed to get back to 7th with fresh tyres. Yeah, so that was a really good drive around the end for him.
Locke and Foley, 7th and 8th, they were the first 2 on the scene to pit. So they made the right choice. Everybody else around them lost their mind. They had no choice. They had to come in, and so they had to keep going round. They basically had made their bed, and they had to lie in it. And Foley and Locke took full advantage of that. So they finished 7th and 8th, and you said Stenberg and Redmond 9th and 10th. We didn't see what happened to Tim in the back of the shot there at turn number 5, but I'll tell you what, there will definitely be a few discussion points out of that, and I'll tell you what, I think Will Devonish might have just lost the any last little scraps he might have had of winning the ASR Supercars Championship for 2024 right there, Rody. That could be the big mistake that costs him any last chance at it.
Potentially, the only thing that's going to throw him any bone is anything coming out of any stewarding. But to be fair, for what he might gain out of race one, he might lose out of race two. He's been involved in one himself so far tonight, so nothing's set in stone. But as things sit, I'm trying to get the points table in as we go, but I've just gotten down to 12, so I have to bring the phone up to get the rest of it in. But I am very much invested now to get these up to date because I really want to know what the picture looks like. I know that without scoring any points out of this race, which obviously did score some. The gap currently sits at 336 between first and second, but clearly that's not true because Devonish did score points. Let me just see if the live timing has got the race there.
The race results have now officially been posted. Of course, the one thing we do say is all the finishing positions are provisional until such a point in time that all the stewarding has, of course, been completed. I do actually want to commend the development series drivers for all of the work that they did in the last round at Taupo, because there was only 3 reports to come out of that, and we haven't even had a chance to look at those yet. But only 3 reports is actually a very good thing. So thank you to all those guys for their efforts. It's definitely been sort of much appreciated with things this year. One thing, Rhodey, that we did have this year that unfortunately we didn't broadcast for the first time in quite some time was Enduro Cup. So we did have, you have, actually I should say, I should give you the honour here, you have put together a little bit of a montage of all the drivers and what went on, just so we could give everybody at home a bit of an understanding of what happened in those 2 races at Sandown and Bathurst.
Absolutely. So we've got a little montage of all the cars available, and the first one off the timing tree is Nathan Higginson, or the Higginson Media Engineering by SES entry, the 00 of Nathan Higginson and Anthony Green. They qualified 3rd, and unfortunately DNF at Sandown in the FPR throwback, but they came back at Bathurst with your own Stephen DeVries in the car, qualified 9th. That was Steve's effort, and a finish of 7th in the tribute to a loose wedding, and as one of a few on the grid for this for the Bathurst event, and one of a few liveries that we'll see later on in the race as well. But great work by Higginson as well to get to the end. Unfortunately, Sandown didn't quite go his way, but that's set him up quite nicely in the standings. We move on over to Daryl Callahan and Damon McDonald in the Paint Doctor Engineering entry. The one of the many teams actually to make it to both events, but one of the slightly smaller teams to have the same drivers for both. They managed a pretty solid run, qualifying 9th and finishing in the 10 at Sandown, and qualifying 4th and finishing 4th at Bathurst. Really good effort from the pair of them. Good to see them in the Enduro format. Next car over did actually enter both rounds. I'm thinking of his teammate, Brandon Dostal and Ethan Knight teamed up in the number 21 for Luke McHugh Racing, one of technically 2 cars they had on the grid. A 7th in qualifying for them at Sandown. Unfortunately, a DNF at lap 66 with, I believe, a game issue. Coming back, though, at Bathurst, qualifying 5th, finishing 6th. Good run from the pair of them, running the Castrol tribute livery to Larry Perkins at Sandown, and very perplexingly running a Shell Mustang livery on a Camaro at Bathurst. Moving on over to their sister team as such, the Luke McHugh Racing Ferrari division. Teams were only allowed to have 1 car per team, hence why they're set up this way. They were running the Malorbo throwback. Clearly, we can't say the actual brand because it's against advertising rules. Angus Brown and Ben Hall behind the wheel of the 22. Qualified 15th. They were right at the back. Put their work in the race, but unfortunately couldn't make it to the end at Sandown, and unfortunately weren't able to make it at all to Bathurst. So it was just a 1-round appearance for them. Moving on to car number 23, the APK SimSport entry of was listed to be Steve Burko and Matt Cecil, but Matt Cecil was not able to make Sandown, and thankfully Jacob Palfrey was on hand to fill in. They were the only team not to put together a livery, so their car is the default Mustang livery that is included in the pack. It's the testing ASR livery, so that's why there is no specific branding on their car. They didn't actually make it for qualifying, unfortunately, so they started right off the back. They did manage to finish, though, and really good effort for Jacob Palfrey. in one of what was actually, I think, one of his last races on controller. So to handle a Gen 3 car with controller is no mean feat, and really good effort by Palfrey to get his laps in there. Then we move over to car number 26, the Gen W Motorsports entry. This is also a single round appearance, unfortunately, for Noah Turra and Greg Turra. Greg, we haven't seen him in a supercar for near on 12 months. He's basically limited just enduro appearances at this point. But fourth in qualifying for Noah and a run to fifth in the race. Good work from the pair of them. Good to get more seat time in for Noah. And interesting for Noah as well to jump in behind the wheel of a Camaro after his time in a Mustang. Moving on over to the next car, which is car number 31, the Vortex Racing Team Sunday Specialist, real big name there. Darren Lognan and Bailey Hall, and this was very much a 5-minute job of a livery, but there was a bit more work put into the driving. Qualifying 13th, but they raced to 7th at Sandown. Qualifying 6th at Bathurst. Unfortunately, very early retirement for the team with an engine failure on the run to turn number 3 from memory. And actually, Darren didn't get too many laps in the car at all. Actually, no, I think it was Bailey about 2 laps in the car at all at Bathurst, but a good run from the pair of them as well. Good to see the Beyond Racing branding out there. Moving on to the next team, which was the number 046 PBA French Engineering, borrowing Phil Boak's number and actually borrowing Phil Boak's door card as well. So I think this chassis is Phil Boak's car, which explains why it's not here at Taupo tonight. Brendan Foley and Phil Boak came out for that one, running basically their season livery. It was actually a split livery with sponsorship. You can't see it at Sandown. Qualified 11th and raced its way to 3rd. And another one with a Lewis tribute, basically just like a testing version of the livery they ran at Sandown. Didn't make it to qualifying, unfortunately, but from the back of the grid, raced their way up to 3rd. And look, these guys are very dependable pairing come enduro time. They love their endurance racing, and it showed they were the best performing and actually 3rd overall in the standings. Moving on over to car number 63, technically the sister car in so much as, but there were 3 PBF cars. This is the second. This was WSA Racing by PBF, standing for Warwick and Steele Allison. And it makes sense as the 2 drivers behind the car were Warwick and Steele Allison. Qualified 14th, didn't make it to the end of the race, unfortunately. A bit of an issue in the driver swap. Meant that Steve Warwick didn't actually get laps in the car. And unfortunately, Steve got no laps in the car at all. He was out for Bathurst. Thankfully, Kurt Stenberg was around to sub in, which is what got the car into 3rd in qualifying. But Mitchell Steele Allison making it 2 for 2 on the race starts, 2 for 2 with a DNF. And unfortunately, Kurt Stenberg didn't get any race laps in the car either. So Mitch is the only driver of the 3 to actually get racing laps behind the wheel of the 63. Switching on to the 69, this was another 1-round appearance from the Surrey's Esports by HME entry of Hayden Cuppett and Kai Jones. The other car running the Ford Performance Racing livery tribute. They qualified 5th and raced to 9th. A good result for the pair of them. Unfortunately, not able to make it to Bathurst, but good to see the pair of them working together as well. Then we move over to car number 95, the SES Sandown Specialists, and unfortunately, a lot of promise in this team going into this year. Obviously, Dane Liccardo switching out Hayden Cupid to get Ryan Smith this time around. Qualified 6th, ran really well, but unfortunately, right at the death, 161 lap race, DNF on that 149 there with the last DNF of the entrance, and unfortunately, PC issues for them curtailed their race, but they were going really strongly. Moved on to Bathurst, and they were not the biggest hype for Bathurst, but they still turned up. They still put the work in. Came from the back as well. Raced their way up to 8th. I think they were one of the last finishes, but importantly, got some points on the board and got a finish for the number 95. Then we move over to car number 137. This was the Luke division by SES, one of 2 5-minute paint schemes. This is the second for Luke Newing and Luke Speck. Very, very original team name. Qualified 10th and raced to 4th. One of a couple of guys to only finish, or a couple of teams to only finish a lap down at Sandown. Early DNF, unfortunately, for them at Bathurst in the hands of Jacob Palfrey, filling in for Luke Speck as he wasn't available. Did qualify 7th, but unfortunately out early for that one as well. But good points for them at Sandown. Moving on to it'll be car number 151, the series SimSport car of Will Devonish and Curtis Sigmanis. You can see what they've done with the numbers there, combined 15 and 51. Not the first time we've seen that Glenn Seaton tribute livery on a Mustang of Termos. He ran a similar livery a couple of years ago with Curtis Egmanis and Brock Harvey. But they managed to win Sandown after qualifying second. Qualifying second again at Bathurst in the Lewis Wedding Tribute. Raced to second this time. And the team they raced for first at Bathurst is the next car on the roster, and that is the number 217 of Wayne's World Motorsports. Wayne Walker and Alice Kidd teaming up there. Qualifying first at Sandown. Unfortunately, didn't quite get the win, but it was a pretty close fought battle. In the end, a little bit more dominant when it came to Bathurst, qualifying first and finishing first. And crucially, by virtue of the countback utilising qualifying position, they were the winners for Enduro Cup. It was Devonish and Curtis Egmanis in second, and Foley and Boak in third. Moving on over to the last couple of entries now. This was the 893, the BS Racing powered by PBF. I don't know what the BS stood for. I don't think it was what we're all thinking it is. Of Leonard Grossel and Stuart McNichol. Really good livery put together by Stuart, the No Fear livery. I think it was one of the most popular liveries of the Enduro Cup. Qualified 12th and finished 8th at Sandown. Unfortunately, hardware gremlins for Grossel on the eve of Bathurst meant they were unable to attend. And Grossel is running that livery for tonight and possibly the rest of the season as well. And we move on to the last two cars. The last dual entry was the 915 Series Answer Motorsport entry of Cam Rutledge and Daniel Cox, running the throwback to I know the car. It was a Camaro, running a throwback to one of the Camaros of old, I think the early 70s. Qualifying 8th and finishing 6th at Bathurst, Sandown, qualifying 8th again at Bathurst, finished 5th this time around. Really good run from the pair of them. Cam put in some good laps, and Coxie had some really nice pace as well. And we've finally moved over to the second of the commentator-backed entries. Ultimate 9 Racing returned again, the number 999, running the same livery that I actually ran to a Super 3 championship win, my only Super 3 championship win in ASC in 2021. I was pairing up with Hans Brunswick, and I was definitely the boat anchor of the pair of us. I qualified us in 10th, and unfortunately DNF for us. We put in some good effort, but engine went for Hans in the end. But that was very much put together as a Lewis tribute as well. The intent for Bathurst was that all teams, if wanted to, would be running a Bathurst tribute to Lewis, given that it would be the last round or the last one he put together for the series, and it's why all the cars have been captured with Lewis's branding in the background. But that's all the entries, and unfortunately that's all we've got for the Enduro Cup. No broadcast this year, but we'll see what happens for next year.
No, absolutely. There's definitely still a little bit of thing to work through with regards to Enduros for next year, whether or not they're going ahead or not. It's look, it did prove to be a bit of a popular format back in the day when it was reintroduced in 2020 with a good strong grid of 20 cars, so better part of 40 drivers. Unfortunately, though, look, real life things do get in the way. Let's just be brutally honest about that. Sometimes it happens for people, and sometimes it doesn't. And in some cases, things do get in the way, and that's just the way life goes. Depending on what happens next year, there's some talk about whether or not the drivers that missed out on doing Bathurst this year, the likes of Tim Redmond and so on and so forth, that didn't decide to to contest an Enduro this year, but would have liked to have done Bathurst. Maybe it becomes a fixture back on the Supercars calendar again for next year, as opposed to the Enduros. I mean, no one's opposed to giving it a break and a bit of time away, but you never know what's around the corner. But in terms of things that are around the corner, it's the last car on the grid for the final race of the night. It is that's Noah Turra, who's going to be starting dead last. But Rody, the field is a little bit mixed up following the results of race 2. And Ryan Smith, well, he's managed to do a double. He's taken a win at both the Development Series race and the Supercars race at Taupo.
Absolutely. So after, respectfully, whatever the hell that end of that race was, it was certainly something we weren't expecting to see, but it was definitely a good variety to the season that is 2024. Ryan Smith will be starting from pole for race number 3. I think it's definitely not something he was expecting to be hearing in a Supercars season, but here he is in the number 911. Starting alongside him will be Daryl Callahan filling for Little Racing. I think it's actually going to be possibly the best points for the season coming for a round for Little Racing. It's not with the main driver in the car, unfortunately. Third is Wayne Walker from Winslow Motorsports. He's got the best position of that heavy hitter, actually quad technically with Noah Tara. Best position of the 4. Leonard Grossel starts from 4th. He's got a bit of work to do, I think, to maintain that with some of the guys behind him, but he ran really well in that end of that race. Very much put in what he needed to where it mattered. Curtis Egmanis, bit of a surprise story to be up in 5th. He's got a bit of work to do again to maintain that position. But look, he did a very good job in race 2. He can clean up some of the mistakes that were creeping in. I think he'd be going along all right. Brandon Dostal up in 6th. It's going to be anything with a light head this high up for SES Team Light. He's got a bit of work to do to hold that position as well, but he's doing a good job in that Team Kiwi Racing throwback. Brenton Foley in 7th, a bit more to where we're used to seeing him, but the big question mark for him is, without really getting a chance to get the tyre wear to last at the end of race 2, how will he go in race 3? Starting from 8th is Lockie Lock for Amp Racing by CRE. Good race by Lockie as well. Another one to pick up tyres though, so whether he's got that tyre wear locked in, we don't know yet. 9th is Kurt Stenberg. He's going to have some fire in the belly. That said, his main title rival is a long way out of the picture right now, with Tim Redmond in 10th. Perhaps a chance for Tim to take advantage of how this race is playing out and try and snag a good result as a Kiwi. 11th is Nathan Higginson. He's a little higher up than we're used to seeing, but managed to do what was needed into that race. With Steve Warwick in 12th, a good run for him as well. 13th is Pete Throw for Beyond Racing. Good to see Pete up in the pointy end with Cam Rutledge in 14th. A little bit of a game freeze there. 15th is Daniel Cox, actually picks the CRE cars line astern, with Darren Longman in 16th. 17th is Kai Jones. He's got a bit of work to do with Alex Kiddis in 18th. Will Davidish in 19th, so he's got a lot of a drive to make up here, with Luke Ewing starting from 20th, and round the corner is Noah Tara starting from 21st.
21 cars for all 3 races tonight, and a couple of different winners so far. So we went 3 different winners in the development series. We've got 2 different winners so far tonight in the main game. Are we going to make it 3 from 3? Let's find out. We are now officially underway for race number 3 of the evening. I'll tell you what, Rody, the pole sitter hasn't got the best of starts all night long, but that's probably the better of the 3 so far for Smith. He was a bit tardy off the line, but he comes back at Callaghan late there, and he does get the whole shot into turn 1.
Absolutely. It was not nearly as good a start as Callahan, who must have a launch control or something seen on his car, because that's 2 brilliant starts seen from him from the front row of the grid. But definitely the grip advantage was to Callahan, but Smith did what was needed, put it right at the inside of turn 1, and is now 2 spots clear of his rival, with Wayne Walker slotting through and sneaking through, so Wayne Walker's going to be his most immediate threat.
I can see Stenberg already making his way through. He's picked up 4 spots already, and he is ahead, crucially, of Curtis Egmanis, Will Devenish's teammate, who could have done a little bit of a service to help his teammate out right about now. Instead, he's making as much hay while the sun goes down and the sun sets here at Taupo. There's another spot. He manages to get past Callaghan at the beginning of this one as well. So up to 4th place, setting out in pursuit of Leonard Grossel and, of course, Wayne Walker in front of him. There is definitely a lot of gut movement going on in the mid-pack. So Locke, who's moved up a couple of spots to 6th place there, as Callaghan's going backwards at the moment, having started on the front row, now falling down to 7th. Dostal's going to buy in here as well, coming down the long back straight into the final complex of corners. Little bit of a wiggle mid-corner for the TKR throwback machine. And he's on the inside of Callaghan and able to get through. Higginson's had a reasonably good start. There goes the mirror cap of the Monster Energy green machine as they exit the final sequence of corners.
Yeah, I think it is getting elbows out as well. He had a big meaty slide come out of the last corner. Higginson with a bit of slide come out of the first corner. Definitely some energy still in this pack. There's a bit of shuffling going on there. Tim Redmond probably doesn't really want to be resitting right now, because the two in front are very willing, and he doesn't really want to get caught out by anything that they're up to. Oh, speaking of, Cam Rutledge around in the back as well, yeah. And Longman wide. Well,
Foley was actually wide on the grass there, and I wasn't quite sure what had caused that, but yes, Rutledge has gone rather wide at turn number 4. That's the blind corner, the blind approach coming over the top of the hill, and might just have a little bit of a look and see if there was a reason for that little off-track moment. Was he on his own, or did he come across somebody on his own there? He looks like he's actually been given a bit of a helping hand and actually spun. Thankfully for him, he went the correct way. when he spun out. So he didn't come back into the traffic. He actually spun away from the traffic on the off the racing line. And it looks like there actually has been a redress there, as Lognan has gone back behind the CRE electrical number 015.
Absolutely. Well, still on in front of Redmond. As I was saying earlier, he's not in a good position because the guys are running pretty willing. And
They're exchanging it again.
Yep.
Whoa, and there we go. Whoa, and I tell you what, for Nathan Higginson, that's as far as you go with cutting someone's nose off to spite your face. That was very silly.
Yeah, I don't think the intent was to cut Redmond's own. I think he was trying to swap over on Kiddis, but because of the way they were battling, Redmond got a much better run now. The last corner was right alongside him, so he had to kind of squeak through the gap. I think he was lucky that he didn't get fully turned in that, but if he had, that would have been all his own fault.
Exactly, that's where I was going with this. If he had turned down across Redmond's nose and he had spat into the fence, that was purely and simply going to be on the 00. I'd seen it for about the third consecutive time. They exchanged some paint, Kiddis and Higginson, going down into the final sequence of corners. And one leaned on the other, and then the other one leaned back on the other one, and then that just, Tim was just sitting in there waiting for an accident to happen. The opportunity was there to get a good run out of the final corner. And then when Higginson went for the switch, the Beyond Racing number 43 was right there. And whoops, well, if you're Higginson, you're not Ken Block, because 43 is Ken Block's number. And the man who runs that car number is sitting right behind you, but a big compression lock going into the 180-degree corner at turn 11, and now he has to defend, and that's also allowed the man he was fighting with, Kiddis, to get away. I probably wouldn't fight here if I was Higo. I'd just let it go at this point, and it'll give Redmond a bit of a nudge for good measure, and almost a repeat there as well, and a few drivers little bit unhappy with what's been going on there, and we might leave them alone for a little bit, I think, Brody. Let's just do that, I think.
Yeah, I think last remark for Higginson is picking your battles. Redmond, I mean, Bowman's make him earn it, but Redmond is probably a bit quicker than you are right now.
Yeah, I think so. So a few drivers making some progress through the field. So Luke Newing is picked up a couple of spots. Of course, he was involved in a little bit of the carnage early on in race number 1, and had a little bit of a strange race in race 2, and he's picked up 3 spots. Will Devonish, just in a couple of spots ahead of him, has picked up 4, and Noah Turra has picked up 7 since the beginning of the race. So they're the ones that started all towards the rear of the field, and slowly making their way through the field. Redmond is now tucked in behind Higginson, who's got this little bit of a train forming. Oh, there's some contact, and that sends the 43 for a ride. Okay.
Yeah, I have a feeling Higginson picked a line, and I think it was in his rights to pick the line potentially, but it looked like a line that was giving diminishing returns of space for Redmond, and unfortunately Redmond was very much committed to the move he was trying to make, and one way or another it was going to result in a bit of wheel-to-wheel contact. It wasn't quite the spin that we saw for Stenberg in race 2, because this was side-by-side contact, and it's just popped him into the braking zone, into the gravel, and unfortunately he's down to the back of the train. He's going to burn through more tyres and back to where he's supposed to be, and I imagine if he does get back to Higginson, he's not going to be too nice to him anymore.
No, I don't think so. That's one of those ones that's also rather difficult to call, I think, as well too. Like you said, Higginson had sort of picked the line that he wanted to choose. Yes, that sort of line naturally goes that way, but there was plenty of space there, so it's going to be rather interesting just to see whether or not there were any movements between either of the cars, because that's really the determination. But Higginson's rather feisty at the moment. I don't know what's going on here. There's let's say Devonish sort of shoves Noah Turra through on Higginson there. This is kind of the racing that we did see a little bit of in the development series, and there were a few upset drivers about some of it, mostly because they were saying that it's difficult to pass at some points if you don't want to be patient, because you have to be, you basically have to nudge somebody to really make a proper effort at passing someone.
It's one of those things. It's very much it's as with anything, it takes 2 to tango. Very much depends on who your 2 is in your tangoing as to how well it's going to go. I know the guys that were racing for championship at the front of Dev Series, guys that were racing for sheep stations. They were racing for sheep stations. They were not giving any inch them more than they had to, and it was making things real difficult for the people they were racing against. The battle for the Super 3 lead, at least in race 3, with unfortunately Matt having a bit of a shocker with a lack of track practice available for him. Me and Kerrison, we were pretty happy in exchanging little pain as possible, and we managed to get past them pretty respectfully. He made me earn it. He didn't make it easy, but you know, if I was alongside, the room was provided, and you can't. There's no obligation to a point provided room when you're on the side, but you can squeeze down. You can knock a mirror off. You can make it a little bit challenging. This is a track that's, I think it's a very nice track to drive. It's a hard track to race, but it depends on who you're racing against. And generally, the Supercars field, I think it's just generally the thing with a lot of the guys that Higginson, at least at this point, is racing, are guys he hasn't usually had to race for a lot of this year. Not that he's not equipped to be able to race them in a proper manner as such, but he's just not people that he's used to racing. That, and maybe Higginson feels with the way race 2 went that, well, if he puts the elbows out, he can maybe get a good result. He maybe is feeling that he's liking this track, he's liking where he wants to be. He thinks he's found a spot to, pitch his tent, and he wants to pitch his tent.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, the eligibility matrix came out at the beginning of the year too, Rhodey, and Higginson was eligible to go back to the development series if he so chose to do so. He didn't want to pass up the opportunity to race the cars that he had done so much of the work on over the course of the year, or as Kiddis goes for a move that probably shouldn't have happened there. He's made some contact with Brandon Dostal, and I think Dostal is going to go back through, but that's not really a redress there. Anyway, back to the Higginson point. The Higginson point was he didn't want to go back to the series because he wanted to race the cars that he had spent so much time putting the effort in for, and I don't blame him for that, but I think the time might have come for him to potentially consider what he wants to do moving forward next year, because if he wants to race, I don't think the Supercars one is working for him. At the end of the day, there wasn't an obligation for the Super 2 champions of years gone past to elevate themselves into the Super 2. That year, of course, it was a battle between him and Lockie. Lock won the championship. Higginson finished second, and they actually both went up into Supercars just off their own choice, in the same manner that Cox decided to go up into Supercars, but he won it the year prior. Last year's champions, they have the opportunity, if they wanted to do it, to stay where they were or go up, but they weren't effectively dominating the series. Brandon Dostal in the box seat, he's potentially looking like he will be in the main game next year, as opposed to whether he's allowed to do both the series. I'm not 100% sure, but that will be determined for 2025. One thing we don't know about 2025 is Higginson's found himself with a penalty, and that's going to be for some track limit violations, I would say, probably at the final sequence of corners, and he's actually pulled the trigger rather early, so it must have happened at the last couple of corners. And, well, I think Tim Redmond Brody might be laughing all the way to the bank that Higginson got his comeuppance, and, well, I think, tell you what, that I think that little picture there said it all.
Yeah, there'll be a small little wry smile in the corner of Tim Redmond's face, I think, at this point.
And there's a few little things going on here. Just saw Igmanis off the road, so he was comfortably running in 5th place, and he's coughed up 4 spots in the space of a couple of corners. So yeah, I think he's run wide. It looks like at about halfway round the lap. We'll get a read on his sector time this time around. Sector 1 time was pretty decent. Yeah, he's actually run off the road. He's had a very scruffy middle sector, 6 seconds off what the standard pace is. There's Alex Kiddis backwards in the rear of the shot there. So something, a few drivers making a couple of issues here. Kiddis trying to recover to the track, and Luke's got to get going, and he's got himself going there. But that's a most unusual position for him to be in. Not quite sure what's happened there. We're about to find out. And here it is for him. This is all on his own, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It is. What's he done there? Oh, he's run wide, dropped it on the grass, and he's given the wall a fair old whack there as well. So there probably will be a bit of steering damage and all of that too. And, well, there's a few more positions gained for a few other folk that were trailing in behind him. I'll tell you what though, Will Devonish wasn't close enough to capitalise on that, and he's had a really, he's had some terrible laps. He's doing about 31 at the moment, in behind Alex Kins here. So his last lap at least was about 31. So not been the this has not been Will Devenish's round. By the same token, Rody, the other part of this equation is that if this turns out to be the worst point scoring round for Will Devenish, it will end up being dropped from his point score, which means he'll get the what was it, the 183 points back that he lost from his worst round at to date at Long Beach. So when that's all done, it's not the final standings tonight as to what things have happened, because we haven't actually we're not calculating these points on the fly, but we're only looking at in totality of what you had before tonight, what you've earned, and then we'll worry about the recalculation of things after the fact, because otherwise it puts in zeros for everybody, and we don't quite understand, you know, that the points have not been calculated properly. So
yeah,
we'll wait and see what happens there, and as it stands right now, Rody, I can tell you concretely that after the first two races, Kurt Stenberg has a 304 point lead before any drop round recalculations are taken into place. So that would be enough. I will be able to do the mental math very quickly on the other side of things. But barring a steward's report or anything for him, it's actually looking like this is the championship defining round. Because we have last couple of seasons we've been fortunate for it to go down to the final throws of the season, but you know there has been some times. I think there's only been one other previous occasion I think where it was decided before the end of the last race of the year.
Yeah. We tend to get pretty lucky with the way those have played out. It's just been a fairly competitive grid where it matters. That even if they're a dominant driver, maybe they're not made it rounds. Maybe they've just had the stability of performance hasn't quite been there. But at least this year, Stenberg's been just putting in performance where he needs to. And unfortunately, I think for Devenish, partially, he didn't quite have the raw out-of-the-box pace of the likes of Stenberg, but he put the work in the last couple of years to get himself to a level playing field in the old machinery. The problem is, this isn't the old machinery anymore, and as much as you can put a lot of work into it, you need time to put the work in. Whereas Stenberg's been able to just jump over, just flip the lights on in the room, and off he goes. And that's sort of the nous, and it's the difference between the drivers that are able to adapt to different cars and the drivers that do need a bit more time. And I think we'll need a bit more time to get used to a car. It definitely over the long term can pay off, but in the short term, you just can't manufacture the time you need to get down to race prep. So we might find a position similar to years gone past, where next year, or maybe it takes 2026, but we might find a position that Will does pull out the extra tenth or so that's needed to actually meet Kurt eye to eye. But at least the things have sat that this year. It's not been necessarily through a lack of pace from Will, but Kurt's just had that little bit extra.
No, you're right. He always seems to find that little bit extra. It doesn't matter, you know, he eventually works out the nuances of the car that's underneath him and drives it to its strengths. And when I look at the big thing that I look at here, as which you can expect rounding up Steve Warwick down the back chute here, and Warwick actually making a fair old fist of it. Actually, he was more than entitled to defend that one there. And I don't know about that one there, whether Ewing probably should have swept through to the advantage there. But anyway, the umpire at the moment saying play on, so that's what they'll do. I have a look at, I guess the statistics on everything are damning when it comes to all things, you know, in ASR, not only just in Supercars, but also in the development series as well. You look at, we talked about average qualifying positions a little bit earlier, so out of the top 4 drivers, Walker was the best. He's 2.44. You've got Stenberg and Noatara are in the mid-3s, and Devenish is the outlier at 8.11 because he's had that skewed qualifying results from a couple of bad rounds. But the average race finishes is the one for me that really does the justice. Stenberg is a full 1 position clearer on average race finishes compared to even Noatara, who's in 3rd place overall, 3.55 to 4.89. So I mean, you're finishing a position higher in full compared to your nearest rival every single round or every single race, that adds up at the end of the day. So, you know, Kurt at 3.55, Will at 5.77, Noah at 4.89, and Wayne Walker at 5.86. You know, they're the top 4 drivers in the championship. That's alarming, right? That rings alarm bells for the likes of Will Devonish and Wayne Walker that need to find that little bit extra.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's one of those things, I think, for some of these guys, it comes down to just extra seat time. So for the likes of Devonish, the likes of Redmond, even if we're talking about seat time, and we're kind of missing in the title fight for at least this year, in the likes of the guys that have actually picked that pace up, that haven't quite gotten to the Stenberg level, but have gotten pretty close. And unfortunately, this round isn't doing a good job of showing it for him. That's he is up to 8th in this race, so he is starting to put some good laps in. But Tara's really presented himself as kind of a 4th or 5th candidate for the heavy hitter title fight, very much on a similar pace level now to the likes of Tim Redmond. Redmond hasn't been able to make all the rounds in the same way that Tara has.
Whoops. But sorry to cut you off there, Rody. Yep. Sorry to cut you off there, but there's been a little bit of a moment for the lead 2 in this little train of 4 that was at the head of the queue. Ryan Smith, I think, had been shuffled wide by Wayne Walker. I think, I'm not sure it was accidentally or if there was a lunge there at the at turn 11, but what it's done is it's taken the 2 Mustangs that were leading this race and it's then flipped it on its head and given it to Leonard Grossel and to Kurt Stenberg now to disappear off into the distance. And there's a car facing the wrong way at turn 11 as well, and it's the other car in that team that was there, Kai Jones, and he might be able to get moving, but yeah, he will flip that car around. But both the SES Satellite, or one of the SES Satellite racing cars, not sister cars, I got that wrong, they've just got the same or similar looking livery, but 2 of the SES cars at the same corner, a couple of laps apart, or a couple of minutes apart, both having their own little moments. We will get the replay here of what happened to Ryan Smith, and I'm not sure if this is sort of accidental or what, Rody, but coming down to the braking zone, big lock up from Walker, definitely accidental. And Walker with a huge compression lock-up on the rear of the Hog's Breath Mustang.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's not ideal at this point. The tyres are going to be, tyres are not going to be happy with that one. The tyres are going to be a little better, I think, after this race, given it to be a lot calmer compared to race 2. But yeah, what that has done is upset the order. It's dropped Walker back to 4th. He's now got Ryan Smith company, and Ryan Smith, the other 2 in this 4, I would have thought, be easy pickings for the guys they're racing against, but clearly not. Maybe there is tyre conservation in play here. Maybe it's also the 2 guys realising that maybe they can play with their foot a little bit. But that's the thing. I didn't expect Grosswitz in there, but I think maybe Stenberg has figured that, or Stenberg at least has done the math in his own head. As Ryan nearly puts himself into a spin. Maybe he's done the math in his own head and figured, look, I don't have to win this race. It'd be nice to give somebody else a win. Maybe not. Or maybe he just wants to, make something of it, as I mentioned with race 2.
No,
make something out of it.
No, I don't think that for 1 minute. I don't think this is. I think this is the earlier analogy of playing with your food.
Yeah.
Lennox in a difficult spot here with a seasoned veteran behind him, 2-time Supercars champion, multiple race winner, hungry for more race wins. He wants to put another one on the board tonight and chalk one up, because of course we did see that the last race of course went to Ryan Smith. First race of the night did go to Kurt Stenberg, so he doesn't want a 3. He doesn't want to see a 3 from a 3 different race winner scenario. He wants to make sure he earns the race the round outright. It was actually looking pretty close for a little while, actually, in terms of the round points as it sits right now with current finishing positions. Stenberg on 156, Walker 166. It was Ryan Smith on 160. So there's only 4 points either way between a couple of the drivers in this top 4. It seems like it's a top 2 that are going to go to toe-to-toe here over the course of the next couple laps. Grossel does not have a win in ASR Supercars competition. He has a couple in a development series, and he jumped up the order because he was almost going to dominate that particular series if he didn't step up to Supercars in the other year. And I'll tell you what, Rody, he's got 10 more corners to go. What are the odds of him holding on to this? I think there'll definitely be a few people willing him on for this one.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm meant to be impartial on this one, but I know where I'm sitting on this one.
But I know where you're sitting on this one, yes.
But yeah, but look, Grossel's had the seat time. He hasn't had the seat time, but like he's had the raw pace. He's someone that was very much looking at like a Supercars competitor, and he's someone that definitely probably has the pace in him. That if he had the option to put the seat time in of the likes of Stenberg, of Devonish, and others, that he could be racing them toe to toe for the entire season. Unfortunately, with where Grossel's been this year, there hasn't been an opportunity to take advantage of that. And to be fair, I put the offer to him. I said, look, if you want to win a championship, maybe this isn't the team for you, but if you want to stick around, we'll have you. And he said, look, I'm enjoying my racing. I'll hang out with you guys. So he's got, after this, he's got one corner complex left, but Stenberg's put the nose up the inside. He's making him earn it though, which is good. Good fair racing.
I'll tell you what though, that gave Stenberg a little bit of an awkward exit now. He can swing down the inside here. If Grossel's got to cover, he has to cover the line here, but he has to be very, very careful under braking. Race wins on the line here, boys. Into the last couple of sequence of corners. They're going to exchange a little bit of paint. And now Stenberg's going to be hung up on the outside as Grossel got the inside run. It'll be a drag to the line. Stenberg's just going to get it. Just gets it at the death there, and that was a fair exchange. I think that Stenny will admit that was probably a very fair exchange between the two of them. Gamesmanship at play there between them both, and they both gave as good as they got. A little bit of rubbing going into the final couple of corners, and well, Stenberg, that should be enough for him for a round win overall. Hard fought round overall, it must be said, with a 2 wins tonight. Best place finish in Supercars for Grossel there, second place for him, so take nothing away from that. Roddy's definitely going to be working out the interviews very quickly after this one, once we figured out the round positioning overall. Wayne Walker home for third, with ahead of Ryan Smith in fourth, so some good strong performances from the two of them tonight, some recovery efforts in there as well. Dostal fifth, good effort for Brandon Dostal, that's a very strong round for him. Noah Turra, 15 spots gained, biggest mover of the race, up to 6th place. So he takes home another solid haul of points, and he needed that as well because he was right behind Will Devonish in the championship, and that will probably elevate him or go very close to elevating him above Devonish with the penalties that have come of things. But the DNF, I guess, effectively is an offset for Will's 19th place in that last race. Locke, a good result from Lockie Locke. So that situation in race 2 where he came in and took those extra tyres, vaulted him up the order, and he actually gained a spot out of all of that. So that actually proved to be a masterstroke at the end of the day from 237. Good to see him returning to the top 10. Turmo. He could have had a little bit of a better run there. He was finishing 5th at one stage, or standing 5th at one stage, and didn't quite get there. Brent Foley with a 9th place finish. And actually good drive from Luke Newing there as well. 10 spots gained for him up to position number 10. The only non-finisher of that one, Nathan Higginson, who retired after a handful of laps, after I guess what could be called a rather interesting exchange with a number of drivers. As Grossel comes back to the lane there, and a few other drivers now on the move back to pit lane as well. So that's all of the racing for tonight. There will of course be some little podium interviews after things have all happened. We're frantically working out the round situation overall, just to see where everything lands after all of this. And as it stands right now, when we have a look at the overall picture, it looks like our round winner will indeed be Kurt Stenberg, 256 points for him, to Wayne Walker with 252, and Ryan Smith with 240, Roadie. So it was very tight going into the final throes of the night's proceedings, but that's how that has come out at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, I'll get a I will get a ping out. So just to clarify, the top 3 was Stenberg. I know Ryan Smith was in there. Who was the third member of that?
Wayne Walker. So Wayne Walker second overall, ahead behind Kurt Stenberg and ahead of Ryan Smith. So they were the top 3 at the end of the day. And as we're saying, as it sits right now, just looking at the point standings, they if everything was to finish in a certain way as they have tonight, there would be a new supercar, a different Supercars champion this year. But we'll wait and see what happens on the other side of things. It's a bit difficult to preempt a couple of things just yet. It actually at the moment also results on a tie between Noah Turrer and Wayne Walker for third overall, depending on how things go over the course of the final race. But yeah, going into to Adelaide at this stage, there'd be a tie for third. So I know, Brady, you're in the process of seeing if you want to call on a couple of drivers to come up and say hello to us up here. But yeah, definitely a rather interesting end to proceedings as for the night. We didn't quite get the same 3 from 3 that we did in the development series, but we got close.
Absolutely, yeah. Some really good racing on there. Look, race one perhaps a little bit quiet as things went for the front. Race two definitely made up for that with the absolute well. I was thinking of the word, and I was thinking, oh, I probably don't want to use it in the broadcast, but I'll use it now. So at the end, people can clip it and get rid of it. Absolute shit mix of an end of race two. And then, yeah, race three, very much halfway between the two, very much to stabilize out a little bit. Some good little, as we said earlier in race one, some good little spot fires popping up here and there. Definitely some heavier fires than in race one. And just a good little battle, very much like we had in Dev Series, a good little battle just simmering away there at the end. Just similar thing to Dev Series, all came down to the last complex of corners. So you called it, Dev Series, all 3 race wins in Super 2 decided there. And in the end, the race win, actually, I think technically, I suppose 2 race wins. I think Ryan and Will ultimately that was potentially where Will got his track cut. But Ryan's win in race 2 perhaps decided by that last complex, and definitely the fight between Grossel and Stenberg decided by that last complex as well. So really good track. I hope we see it back again next year, probably with a slightly longer format that allows for some pit stops so that we can run the soft tyres hard the whole way through, but really good racing.
Yeah, no, very good racing, very hard racing, and very fair racing. I think is in a lot of cases. There definitely were a few drivers that got their elbows out, and I think even look, I think some drivers would probably have enjoyed the battle, and some of them probably would have thought it went a little bit too far. But that's something for another time. But right now, Rody, let's turn our attention to our round winner overall with 2 race wins for the night as we kickstart our Beyond Electrical round review, and that of course is Kurt Stenberg.
It is. And Kurt, you debuted a new livery and you picked up a couple of wins with it. And crucially, while it's not been confirmed yet, you might now have one hand on the championship trophy. How'd tonight go for you?
Well, look, I'm expecting 2 penalties. So, yeah, race one, I was surprised at our pace. I obviously been in Queensland. I got home yesterday, so I didn't really get a lot of prep, and I've been sick. So was really happy with the pace and how the tyres were in race one. I expected Wayne to come back at me because I went hard at the start. But yeah, he got past me there. I think he was pretty desperate to get in front of me because we both obviously know each other's tyre condition. And I saw that once he got past me, he was really struggling for tyres too. And then we obviously made contact. I was trying to go up the inside of him. He was braking early because he realised his tyre was basically gone. And well, yeah, I drove into him and took the win that way. It's not how I wanted to win because it was an awesome race before that point for the whole race. So, but I spoke to him about it, and yeah, I feel bad for that one. And then race two, well, where do we start? It was a bit shit in the mid pack, I think. Some drivers that were driving questionably towards me. They know who they are. But I feel really bad because I know I turned Tim Redmond around on the last lap. I went for a move on Grossel, and that just didn't pull it off because I thought that I'd had more space than what I did, and the whole field checked up. So I feel bad for Tim, but move it on. Last race, well, went pretty well. Probably as good as it could have gone from P9. I didn't expect to win from there, but honestly, the battle with fucking what's his name,
Let up.
Grossell on the last lap, or the last few laps, like that was the best racing of the night for me. He drove so well under pressure, so I can't give kudos enough to his driving. I genuinely thought he had me beat. He probably shouldn't have defended into that last complex because I feel like the outside was stronger. And when he did that, I thought, I've got a chance here. I'm going to take it. I actually had my spotter telling me not to go for the move for the championship, but you know me, I'm never going to back away from it. So I feel bad that I took away what could have been probably his first win, I think. So, but you know, it's racing, and I had a crack, and I love the battle anyway. I'm surprised I came out on top, but it's just awesome to have a race like that. That's what you come. That's what you come and race for.
Absolutely. Well, look, as you've said yourself, we're not sure yet whether your grasp on the trophy is definite as things sit right now. So it might come down to the last round. What's your thoughts coming into Adelaide?
Well, it's hard tires. It's Adelaide. I mean, anything can happen. I've DNF there in the past. I don't know. Like, I think it's not about tires. That's one thing you can rule out, being it's
Yep.
on the hard. So I don't know. I'd love to go out there and go for wins, but I never know what's going to happen. So I think though in the first race, even regardless of what happens, I think first race I should bank it as long as I finish. So maybe we just play it by ear and see how we go. See how our pace is. If our pace isn't good enough to win, then we just try and get the points to get the championship.
Fair enough. Well, great work by yourself tonight, and good to see the new livery out with the Sneeze Midnight Racing backing. And we'll catch you in a few weeks' time at
No
Adelaide.
worries. No worries. And shout out to Andy Cole. I've had about 6 of them today, and they're the only thing keeping me going. So thanks to my sponsor.
That's fair enough. Good to see you still with us, Kurt.
See ya.
Alrighty, moving on over to well, actually, he's not turned up for us, unfortunately, second in the round, so we're gonna have to move over to third place in the round, which is a bit of a surprising turn of events. But Ryan Smith, you picked up a win in Supercars.
Yeah, feels special. Feels weird, to be honest, to think that I've went from 1 week ago fighting Dostal for the win in Dev Series, and I've gone out and gotten a win in main game now. It's a special feeling. I'll say that.
Absolutely, and by all means, cover as much of it as you want to, leave as much of it in the closet as you want to as well. But given what this round and what this day or what this week means to you, very special time to do it.
100%. It means a lot. I came into this round, obviously having Winton with the reverse grid at Winton, got a podium there. I came into this. I said to Hato and Kai, but said to them both, I want a podium this round. Obviously, because the reasoning for the car, there's reasons behind it. It means a lot to me, especially to be able to go out and win a race in it. It's something special for me.
Absolutely. Well, you're right. You're talking back to Winton. So you picked up your 2 podiums this year, this being your second, and your last one was at Race at Winton. So you got a knack for these reverse grid races. Unfortunately, you're going to wait till next year to see your next one. But thoughts coming into Adelaide?
Well, I've got Dev Series in 2 weeks' time, I think. Looking to go out with a bang for that. Obviously, the 2 longer races this year, Sandown and Bathurst in Dev, I've won through the second half of the race, with against Dostal finishing second to me. So I'm looking to try and go out with a bang there, and then hopefully run in the top 5 if I can at Adelaide in main game.
Absolutely. Well, fair enough. Great way by yourself tonight, Ryan, to pick up that win, and great racing overall. And we'll catch you in a few weeks' time at Adelaide.
See you then.
Alrighty, moving on over to sort of wildcard introductions, and the first of them had a really good run in race 2 and was definitely doing his best to be the head of the train, and that is Darryl Callahan, who was filling in tonight for Ben Hall. We haven't seen you appear too much in the Supercars series, Darryl. When you have, you've been putting in some good work, but tonight to pick up a second, really good work from yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I was just fill in when someone can't make it. I was pretty lucky in the second race. Just got a good start and was able to keep clean, stay out of trouble. And yes, I was pretty lucky actually to finish second with the 2 boys at the last corner, have a bit of a get together, and I was able to duck up the inside and just get both of them. So I was pretty happy.
Awesome. Well, how'd you find the racing tonight? Given that you obviously got a big experience with the cars, you're also racing Dev Series this year, so you're having to swap between the two. How'd you find the racing generally tonight?
Yeah, it was good. It took me a few laps through the week to get back used to the main game car. It was obviously a lot different to drive, but after a few laps, I was able to get my times down pretty good. So I was happy with that.
Absolutely. Well, there's no guarantee just yet that we're going to see you for Adelaide. Obviously, if you're being in a fill-in role, you're relying on someone else not to turn up. But coming at least into Dev Series Adelaide, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be in Bali for the for the Adelaide, so I'll miss out on that round.
Ah, bugger. All right. Well, in that case, good way to finish out your time in ASR for this year with a podium and
Yeah,
your
thanks
first
a lot.
podium in ASR Supercars.
Great, thanks, Brady.
Alrighty, and lastly, we have Leonard Grossel. And Leonard, oh so close. It came down to a couple of corners, and you nearly picked up your first Supercars race win, but a really good drive for you overall.
Yeah, cheers. Honestly, wasn't expecting to be running up the pointy end of the field at all, but happy to be there.
Absolutely. Well, a good way to get something on the board for the livery, given your mate Stuart put together for you for the Enduro Cup, but weren't able to quite do it justice there. Generally speaking, how was the racing for you tonight?
I love driving around the track. The racing sort of felt a bit snaky and sort of single file, was really tough to pass. Not really any like favorable spots to do it in, but yeah, that turned out to be pretty good for me, honestly. Really happy with my driving. Sort of developed a good flow throughout race 2, and then even better one in race 3. Just really happy.
That's awesome. Going in then into Adelaide, assuming that the hardware holds up, and it's not been the most reliable for you this year, but assuming the hardware holds up, what's your thoughts coming in Adelaide?
I'm not too good at the track. I enjoy driving it, so I'm gonna just hope for just a decent midfield finish, I think.
Fair enough. Well, great work by yourself tonight, and we'll catch you in a few weeks' time at Adelaide.
Cheers.
And that has been our round review.
Certainly has been the round review. Thank you very much, Rody, as always. It's, I guess, we give you free choice, I guess, a little bit, with a little bit of a nudge from me sometimes in terms of doing the interview. So I'm glad you grabbed a couple of drivers that we haven't had a chance to talk to all year long, which has been great. I mean, the last time I think anybody ever spoke to Darryl Callaghan was when he was in that little bit of a purple patch when himself and Damon McDonald were actually doing quite well in the development series, and they'd won 3 races between them in a space of 3 consecutive races, which was quite good to see. So it's one of those things we don't get a chance to speak to a couple of people we don't see a lot of down the field. So that was very nicely done, very well struck. So looking ahead to Adelaide in a couple of weeks. It's coming up fast. It is one of those events that everybody's familiar with the circuit, so everybody knows what to expect. And it's only 3 weeks away for the main game. It is 2 weeks away for the development series. So there's actually not a lot of changes to the track that's going on for this year. In fact, it's basically nothing. Apart from locking in the hard tyre compound and making sure it's all good. So that's all the changes are that are in play for the next couple of days. And then we finish out our season for the entire year, basically, on the last day in November. So we look forward to having your company then, as we have had all season long. So until next time, please drive safely, and we'll see you then. Bye for now.